You're going to follow us secretly and keep watch of people who will subtly follow us from behind. Make sure to identify them properly because we need to capture them at a later time. The three of you have the skills to make this happen, so I'm counting on girls to watch my back. I'm pretty sure that our excursion yesterday bore fruit. In fact, there are even people currently observing this flying ship as we speak. This is also the reason why I asked you to not leave the cabins and show yourselves on the deck. The moment they find out that there are more beautiful ladies on this ship, they might attempt to bring more people to capture the three of you. Wait, did you just call me beautiful? Lyle's expression softened after hearing Ethan's words. You're Lily's sister. Of course you are beautiful, Ethan replied. Why can't you just be honest and just say that I'm very attractive in your eyes? Lyle inquired. Ethan ignored her and glanced at Nicole and Hecate, who had smiles on their faces. Listen, we have become too high profile yesterday and have attracted the attention of many influential people in the city, Ethan said. I don't know if Godfrey and his men are among those people, but the possibility exists. It's fine if they focus their attention on me and not on you girls. Remember, I brought you here because I trust the two of you. No matter what happens, the two of you must keep your identity a secret. Ethan then handed a polygender potion to the teenage girls and reluctantly handed one to Lyle as well. Keep a safe distance and don't make yourselves too obvious, Ethan stated. Remember the faces of the individuals following me, but don't make contact with them. I will deal with them myself at a later time. Without another word, Ethan drank the potion in his hand. A few seconds later, the changes took effect, turning his toned body into that of a delicate young lady whose beauty had made Prince Isaac and several nobles' hearts skip a beat. I'll go first, Ethan said. Leave the airship after 10 minutes. After saying those words, Ethan left the room and went to meet Merrick and Connell, who were waiting for him at the deck. After Ethan grouped with the two men, they boarded a carriage that would take them to the city. Lilith, who was in her cat form, sat on the flying ship and watched her master's carriage head to the city. She was paying close attention to the people in the port where their ship was parked, and sneered when they saw them fly toward the city in haste, most likely to inform their masters that Lady Ethel was now going to meet with Prince Isaac at the city gates. 10 minutes later, three handsome guys emerged on the deck. Nicole and Hecate summoned their flying grooms. You can ride with me, Lilith, Hecate said. Lyle will ride with Nicole. Lilith nodded and jumped onto Hecate's broom, sitting behind the handsome young man whose appearance now would probably make her best friend Joanne tease her to oblivion. Remember, Lyle, don't make any scene, Nicole stated. Relax, Lyle replied. I won't mess this up, Mr. Nick. The two witches didn't fly toward the city right away. Instead, they used a telescope to check if Ethan's carriage had already reached the city gates. Seeing the carriage go past the city gates, the observer team waited for 10 more minutes before taking off to the sky. Since Lilith could easily track down Ethan through their connection, they would be able to follow him easily, regardless of where he went in the city. You look very beautiful today, Miss Ethel, Prince Isaac greeted with a smile. Thank you, Your Highness, Ethan replied. I'm looking forward to seeing the places we will visit today. As you should, my lady, Prince Isaac nodded. I will do my best to give you a memorable experience. The prince had also prepared his own carriage, and this carriage was something only the members of the royal family used. It was deliberately designed to have no roof, as it was meant to be used for sightseeing. 4 guards were stationed at the corners of the carriage, standing on platforms meant for their use. Isn't that Prince Isaac? One of the ladies who saw the royal carriage pass by looked at the prince with eyes filled with admiration. Who is that lady with him? A young man asked. Is she a princess from the neighboring kingdom? I don't think so, another man replied. I saw her yesterday, and it didn't seem like she was a princess. If she were one, she would have been surrounded by guards yesterday. The people murmured as the carriage passed through the streets. This attention made the smile on Prince Isaac's face widen. He was very happy that his love rivals weren't with Ethel, and that she was only accompanied by her guardian and retainer. Also, seeing the faces of the men who were looking at him and Ethel gave him an ego boost. When a beautiful lady like her was seen with him, the prince, people would think that they were a match made in heaven. Just this thought was enough to boost his confidence. At the same time, he was also making a statement to everyone that the lady in his carriage was off limits. What a pompous prince, a devilishly handsome man with blonde hair and blue eyes, watched the carriage from a distance. Look at him, displaying her in public like a flower that belonged only to him. It's too bad that such a flower is too good for him. The handsome man chuckled before eyeing Ethel from afar. Right now, he planned to let the prince accompany her for a little while as compensation before he went in to sweep Ethel off of her feet. Although Prince Isaac was a member of the royal family compared to him, he was nothing but an insignificant insect. Because they were riding on a carriage, Ethan and Prince Isaac were able to cover more ground than usual. It was impossible for them to not attract the attention of the masses since they toured the popular locations in the city. The Milesian architecture is truly a sight to behold, Ethan said as he admired the scenery around him. But there are rumors that your kingdom is preparing to wage war in distant lands. Is this true? Wage war on distant lands? Prince Isaac shook his head. You must have heard it wrong, Lady Ethel. Currently, the Milesians are preparing our armies for another reason. Prince Isaac looked on his left and right side before leaning in close to Ethan as if what he was going to say was a state secret. Lady Ethel, have you heard of the Fomorians? Prince Isaac asked. I only know a bit about their history, Ethan replied. They are a powerful race of monsters that hid away from the world after they were defeated by the Tuatha De Danann. At least that is the story that I know. Prince Isaac nodded. You're right, but according to our intelligence network, they are planning to return to the surface world. But that sounds scary. Ethan frowned. If they come back, wouldn't all of Midgard face danger? Worry not, Lady Ethel, Prince Isaac said with confidence. The Milesian army is strong enough to repel such threats. The advances in our magical technology have been great over the years, and we've invented magic cannons that can blow half of a giant's body with a single cannon fire. Such a thing exists? Ethan was genuinely surprised because he never heard of such a magical weapon before. It does, Prince Isaac grinned, but only our kingdom has it. Our magic research is ahead of everyone in the field. Connell and Merrick, who couldn't use magic, simply listened to the prince's words. Although they were unable to wield it, they could still understand the importance of having such weapons at the ready. The dwarves of Northshire prided themselves in creating flying warships that also used magic cannons, but none of their magic cannons were strong enough to destroy half of a giant's body with a single hit. If what the Milesian prince said was true, then any kingdom whom the Milesians would wage war upon would be at a great disadvantage. I just hope for everyone to live peaceful and happy lives, Ethan said softly. Is that too much to ask? It is not too much to ask, Lady Ethel, Prince Isaac replied. However, if we truly want peace, then we must prepare for war. What good is peace and freedom if we can't protect it? Those with power can simply destroy this peaceful life. So we must also become strong enough to ensure that our freedom and happiness will be protected at all times. This is why you shouldn't worry about the Fomorians. If they ever step foot in our lands, they will understand that their time of glory has long passed. The day where they can move unhindered in the world is over. They must follow the new rules set by humans or once again fade into the pages of history. Just as Ethan was about to comment, a chuckle reached her ears. Those words only belong to the privileged and the ignorant. As expected of Prince Isaac, you only see the world from the eyes of those who were born with a golden spoon. Who dares? Prince Isaac glanced in the direction where the voice came from and saw a handsome young man riding on a white horse, matching the pace of the royal carriage. Who dares? The devilishly handsome man chuckled a second time. I dare, Prince Isaac. Do you have any problem with it? The moment the prince saw the arrogant fellow, he immediately raised his hand to stop the carriage from moving. Ethan, on the other hand, did his best to keep himself calm. The person he was looking for had finally shown himself. Lord Godfrey, why am I not surprised to see you here? Prince Isaac said icily. Have your subordinates informed you of Miss Ethel's visit to the city? Yes, Godfrey replied. At first I thought they were simply exaggerating her beauty, but now that I see her up close, I think they failed to describe in words just how angelic she looks like. Godfrey then placed his hand over his chest and gave the young lady a polite bow. Allow me to introduce myself, Miss Ethel, Godfrey said. My name is Godfrey Tepes. It's an honor meeting you, Miss Ethel Langley. Prince Isaac was clearly not pleased to see the man in front of him. There had been a few times when he and Godfrey had fought with words over a lady, and although the handsome blonde usually backed off, there were times when he would openly seduce the ladies he was with. In terms of looks, Godfrey was far superior to the prince. The devilishly handsome man was oozing with confidence and possessed a charisma that made everyone feel attracted to him. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Lord Godfrey," Ethan replied. "Please don't call me Lord Godfrey," Godfrey said. "Just call me Godfrey. Being too formal in our first meeting isn't to my liking." "Lord Godfrey, can you please not get in the way of Lady Ethel's tour of the city?" Prince Isaac said icily. "She is my very special guest, and I intend to make this day a very memorable one for her. Please don't ruin it, and return to your mansion. I'm pretty sure that you have dozens of beautiful ladies to indulge in your fantasies." "Phrasing, Your Highness," Godfrey commented. "You make it sound like I'm such a debauched individual." "And you're not?" Prince Isaac sneered. "All the nobles know that you secretly conduct orgies inside your mansion. If that is not being debauched, then I don't know what is." "Those are just unfounded rumors, Your Highness," Godfrey smirked. "I'm a gentleman, and I will never do that to any woman, especially those who wish to partake in a romantic evening with me." "Sophistry," Prince Isaac scoffed. "You are indeed very eloquent when it comes to words, but like I said earlier, do not dare put your dirty hand on Lady Ethel. She is my guest, and I will not let you defile her." A sigh escaped Godfrey's lips before shaking his head helplessly. "My lady, His Highness is very biased toward me," Godfrey said. "I hope you do not believe his words. I only came here to ensure that he will not do anything bad to you and use his power and authority to get his way. This is not the first time he has done such a thing, and I will not be able to sleep at night knowing that he is about to ruin yet another wonderful lady." "Hurry, you fiend!" Prince Isaac was about to order his guards to teach Godfrey a lesson, but before he could do that, Ethan raised her hand in order to stop him from doing so. "Everyone, please calm down," Ethan said. "It'll be dangerous to fight here in the streets. Innocent people might get hurt." Prince Isaac took a deep breath before nodding his head in agreement. "You're right, Lady Ethel," Prince Isaac stated. "Move the carriage." The carriage once again moved forward, resuming the tour. However, they gained an unwanted escort who was looking at the beautiful flower whom he believed bloomed only for him. It was worrying that Godfrey was accompanying them on their tour. Fortunately, the demigod didn't do anything except glance at Ethan from time to time. Prince Isaac, who was doing his best to keep his cool, decided to distract his guest by telling her stories about the city of Cashel and the history of the Milesians. Since he wanted to look good in front of the beautiful lady accompanying him, he even divulged a few secrets about the movements of the Fomorians, as well as the war preparations of the Milesians. "Truth be told, my father, the king doesn't wish to confront them at this point in time," Prince Isaac said. "And frankly, I'm sure the Fomorians also don't wish for it either. Perhaps a compromise would be reached, but until then, the entire kingdom is on high alert." Ethan thanked the Milesian prince for this information, which made Prince Isaac very happy. Godfrey, on the other hand, chuckled as if finding the prince's attempt to make himself look smart was very amusing. "Spoken like a truly ignorant man," Godfrey commented, after he finished laughing. "What did you say?" Prince Isaac glared at the annoying insect who just wouldn't buzz off no matter how many times he asked him to leave. "I said, you are a very ignorant man," Godfrey answered. "No need to thank me for speaking the truth. All I can say is, you're welcome." Prince Isaac wanted nothing more than to punch the annoying man's face with his fist, but his father had forbidden their entire royal family from antagonizing Godfrey, who held the rank of duke in their kingdom. Despite his high rank, the devilishly handsome man didn't stay in his domain, and was even more than happy to give his retainers free rein on how to manage his lands. Godfrey simply stayed in the city of Cashel, which was the capital city of the Milesian kingdom. To this day, Prince Isaac and his siblings still had no idea why this annoying, yet very charming man was hailed as an untouchable. Of course, Godfrey looked like a law-abiding citizen on the surface. He was also someone who was loved by many, especially the ladies, due to his dashing appearance. But behind that charming face was a darkness that even the king of the Milesians didn't dare to touch. "I apologize on his behalf, Lady Ethel," Prince Isaac said. He is a perfect example of a rotten noble of our kingdom. Please don't take his words to heart." Ethan nodded and smiled at the prince, giving Godfrey a sidelong glance. This was not the first time he had seen the demigod, but he had to admit that if he didn't know how dangerous the other party was, he might have lowered his guard and chatted with him more about the information he knew about the Fomorians. After 2 hours of touring the city, Prince Isaac took Ethan back to the restaurant of Osteria, where they first met. "It's a shame that Lady Ethel cannot stay for long, but please, let's have some snacks before you return to your quarters," Prince Isaac said before shifting his gaze to Godfrey, who also followed them inside the restaurant. "Sorry, but you're not invited. Please don't follow us, Lord Godfrey." Godfrey gave the prince a playful bow before walking toward a table with a few ladies waving in their direction. "Ha! I can't stand that womanizer," Prince Isaac muttered the moment he was certain that Godfrey was out of earshot. "Lady Ethel, let's go." Ethan nodded and followed behind the prince, who had made preparations for this afternoon break. Desserts of every kind that girls commonly love to eat, as well as some other snacks that could be enjoyed by anyone, were placed on top of the table. Connell and Merrick, who were serving as Ethan's escort, were not fond of sweet things. Because of this, they only settled for some coffee and plain biscuits. Ethan, on the other hand, knew that he had to play his role and ate a few cake slices, which were too sweet for his liking. Even so, he ate, and thanked the prince for his hospitality, making Prince Isaac's smile widen a bit. An hour later, Ethan and the others left the restaurant of Osteria and were escorted to the city gates by Prince Isaac. Godfrey didn't follow behind them, seemingly busy with entertaining the ladies who seemed to have a very close relationship with him. "Will I see you again tomorrow, Lady Ethel?" Prince Isaac asked. "Please say yes." "Tomorrow might be difficult," Ethan replied, "but the next day will be fine." "Good," Prince Isaac smiled. "I'll meet you here at the gates at 1 in the afternoon." "Okay," Ethan nodded. "Thank you for everything, Your Highness." "No, my lady." Prince Isaac bowed politely. "It is my pleasure to be of service." The young man was about to kiss Ethan's hand, but Merrick was quick to act and prevented the prince from doing what he wanted. I'm sorry, but Lady Ethel's father asked me to not let anyone greet our young miss in this manner," Merrick said in an apologetic tone. "I hope you're not offended, Your Highness. She comes from a very conservative family." "Ah, I'm sorry, I didn't know." Prince Isaac tried to keep his disappointment from appearing on his face, but since he didn't want to look like a persistent person, he decided to give up for the time being and try again the next time they met. "Your Highness, there is also one issue I find troublesome." Connell, who didn't speak much during the tour, decided to voice out what was on his mind. "I noticed that there were several people eyeing our airship and observing our movements yesterday. Lady Ethel was very troubled by this, so she stayed inside her cabin the whole day. If possible, I would like to ask Your Highness to deal with these suspicious people. I'm sure my lady will feel safer knowing that His Highness has made a move to keep her safe." "Say no more, Sir Connell," Prince Isaac replied, while patting his chest. "I will make sure that no one will trouble Lady Ethel during her stay here in our lands." "Thank you, Your Highness," Ethan replied. "Your words mean a lot to me." Seeing that this was an opportunity to score some brownie points, Prince Isaac called for his aid and gave orders to chase away the pests who were spying on the apple of his eye. Ethan then returned to the flying ship, escorted by a few wizards who did their duty and chased away the men who were ordered by their respective masters to keep tabs on the young lady's movements. After Ethan successfully returned to his cabin, he found 3 beautiful ladies waiting for him with smiles on their faces. "Thank you, Your Highness," Lyle said while imitating Ethan's voice. "Your words mean a lot to me, Tilda." "Ha ha ha ha, very funny," Ethan replied before snapping his fingers. Immediately, his transformation ended, returning him to his original appearance. "So have you kept tabs on the faces of those who were secretly following me earlier?" Ethan asked. "Even better, I cast a tracking spell on them without their notice," Nicole replied. "We will be able to track them wherever they go in the city." "So what's the plan?" Connell asked. "Do we kidnap them tonight?" "Yes." Ethan nodded. "But you guys will be the ones doing the kidnapping. I will act as bait to draw out the attention of the observers whom the subordinates of the prince weren't able to drive away. Also, I have a feeling that Godfrey had set his sights on me. As long as I stay on the airship, he will definitely follow to talk to me." Hecate narrowed her eyes after hearing Ethan's words. That's too dangerous. What if he suddenly tries to capture you? Don't worry, I won't be going alone, Ethan replied. You and Lilith will accompany me. Since Dainsleif is also with me, I am certain that we will not be defeated so easily. Nicole frowned but didn't oppose Ethan's decision. So this is a two-way mission, Nicole commented. One team will capture and interrogate the targets, while the other team will try to lure Godfrey and the observers who are paying close attention to this airship, allowing the first team to move undetected. That's your plan, right? Ethan nodded. Yes. As long as I'm inside the airship, people will pay close attention to it, preventing you guys from doing your mission. Then, when will we set out? Lyle, who seemed to be very excited to beat up some people, said with a smile. At 8 in the evening, Ethan replied. So make sure to eat a light dinner. We will be busy the entire night. Everyone in the room nodded their heads in understanding. Finally, they were now about to start their mission, which was the main reason why they came to the city of Cashel in the first place. After eating a light dinner, Ethan went back to his room to make the final preparations. Everyone was ready to go, but none of them had drunk the potion that Ethan gave to them just yet. The young man had told them that their operation would begin after half an hour, so drinking the potion now would simply waste its effects. While everyone was waiting, Ethan was inside his room, about to make an important decision. Although it might sound silly, he was struggling with a dilemma. And that dilemma was choosing whom he would kiss between Nicole and Hecate. Throughout their journey, he had used his power several times, but he hadn't recharged it with a kiss, not even once. But since there was a possibility that he would fight against Godfrey after leaving the airship, he needed to be in his peak condition to ensure that he would be able to face him with everything he had. If you want it to be less awkward, why don't you just kiss Hecate? Sebastian commented. She's the saintess of the Order of the Tidebringer, so there's nothing wrong with kissing her. I'm with Team Nicole on this one, Ethan's other half commented. Best friends for life. Hecate, Nicole, Tisk, Sebastian, and Ethan's other half, who usually agreed on the same thing, were now making things difficult for Ethan. If the two of them agreed on who Ethan would kiss, then he would probably lean on their decision as well. But hearing that even they were split, he felt undecided. Okay, use the last resort, Sebastian commented. Toss a coin. Heads or tails? Yes, do it. Ethan's other half nodded. Ethan glared at the two and decided to ignore them for the time being. He would feel bad if he used that method to decide whom he would ask to help replenish his magic reserves. However, he also understood that the more he delayed, the more conflicted he would become. Suddenly, he heard a knock on the door, which broke him out of his daze. Sir Ethan, are you all right? Hecate asked. Nicole asked me to come because she was worried that you might be constipated or something. We can always do this mission tomorrow if you're not feeling very well. Ha 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 ha. Sebastian and Ethan's other half burst into laughter after hearing the young lady's words. Ethan ignored them for the second time and walked toward the door to open it. Come in, Hecate, Ethan said as he stepped aside to let the young lady inside his room. Hecate nodded and entered the room without any questions. This is perhaps fate, Ethan thought as he locked the room to prevent anyone from suddenly barging in. He then glanced at the young lady, who was looking back at him with a calm expression on her face. He had only known Hecate for a short while, and yet she had become part of his life, even more so after she became Joanne's best friend in the academy. There were times when he saw Princess Ramona's visage on her, but he thought that this was only due to them having a few similarities because they were part of the same bloodline. The only difference was that Princess Ramona was human, while Hecate was a half-elf. Hecate, you are aware of how I'm able to wield magic, right? Ethan asked as he remained standing beside the door. Yes, Hecate replied. It's recorded in the diaries of the First Saintess. You can't produce magic on your own, so you need the power of others in order to wield it. Ethan nodded. That's right. In order for me to use magic, I need to kiss a witch to absorb a fraction of their power. However, ever since my magic circuits have repaired themselves, my magic capacity has also increased. A single kiss will not be enough to fill it completely. The young man didn't have this problem before because his lovers were more than happy to give him kisses to make sure that his magic reserves were always full. But now, none of them were with him, so he was forced to make a hard choice. "If that's what you're worried about, Sir Ethan, then I guarantee you that there is no problem," Hecate said, as she placed her right hand over her chest. "I have mentioned this in the past, but the Saintess of the Order exists only to serve you. This is our calling, and frankly, I hope that you will acknowledge our determination when it comes to fulfilling our roles." The young lady walked towards Ethan and gave him a hug, burying her head into his chest. "I came here to not only help you defeat Godfrey but to fulfill my role as well," Hecate stated. "If the first Saintess was here, she would not hesitate and do the same thing I am doing right now." After he was reminded of the princess whom he had left behind in the past, Ethan felt an ache in his chest as he wrapped his arms around Hecate's body, holding her tight. "Sir Ethan?" Hecate, who had just been hugged back, felt her heart beating wildly inside of her chest. "Let me stay like this for a while," Ethan said softly, holding the Saintess close to him. "Just a little while, I promise." Hecate nodded, doing her best to calm down her rapidly beating heart. A few minutes later, Ethan finally took a step back and looked at Hecate, whose face was flushed as she looked back at him with expectation. The young man then cupped her face and lowered his head to kiss her lips. Hecate subconsciously closed her eyes, and a moment later she felt his lips press her own. At that moment, deep inside her consciousness, the sound of something clicking reverberated inside of her mind. As if the final puzzle had fallen into place, Hecate felt as if something inside of her had awakened. Ethan, who was not aware of what was happening, pulled back after kissing Hecate once. He wanted to make sure that she didn't have any apprehension about being kissed by him, because if she did, he would stop and not force her to do it. A moment later, Hecate opened her eyes and looked at Ethan with teary eyes. "Finally," Hecate muttered softly, before taking the initiative to wrap her arms around the young man's neck as she stood on tiptoe to kiss his lips once, twice, and thrice in quick succession. Her soft pecs, which were filled with love and affection, made Ethan feel as if was being kissed by the princess whom he had left behind in the lands of Alistair. "Kiss me, Ethan," Hecate said, looking teary-eyed. "I have been waiting for this moment since forever. Please kiss me." Ethan, who didn't know why he felt like his heart was melting inside his chest, obeyed the young lady's words and gave her a long and sweet kiss, which made Hecate feel as if her heart was being filled up to the brim with happiness. A single tear slid down the side of her face because her wish that was delayed by hundreds of years was finally about to come true. Nicole, who was leaning against the doorframe outside the room, sighed softly in her heart. She was the one who asked Hecate to kiss Ethan because she wanted to know what the Saintess of the Magdar Kingdom truly felt. Was it curiosity? Was it an obligation? Was it duty? Or was it something else entirely? Nicole wanted to know this because Ethan was a very dear friend to her. As long as Hecate was honest with the way she felt for him, she would not hesitate to give her a light push as she had done just now. Nicole then walked away and went back to her room. She was certain that very soon, Ethan would call upon her so that they could start the mission that would decide their fate. Hecate locked the door of her cabin before heaving a sigh. Memories flooded inside her head, allowing her to regain what she had lost after being reborn. However, she only regained half of it. Even so, they were enough. As if waking up from a long and endless dream, Hecate placed her hand over her chest, where her heart was. Even after returning to her room, her heart was still beating as fast as it had the moment Ethan held her and kissed her passionately. She felt a little drained because Ethan had taken a good chunk of her magic power. Even so, it was not something to be worried about. Since she couldn't even use other types of magic except for body-strengthening magic, it would not be a problem even if the young man took most of the magic power she currently had. "I have to get a grip," Hecate muttered. "This mission comes first. I'll worry about the rest later." Taking a deep breath, she decided to change her clothes. Knowing that there was a possibility that they would be fighting against a demigod, Hecate put on the battle robe she always carried with her. The robe was made from mithril and adamantium, and it was forged by the greatest elven blacksmith in the lands of Alistair. It could conduct magic properly, as well as offer sturdy defense against magical and physical attacks. Once she was properly dressed, she looked at her reflection in the mirror one last time before leaving the room with a satisfied look on her face. Her face was no longer beet red, and her heart had calmed down. It was now time for her to do their mission, and she would protect Ethan without fail. Everyone gathered in the dining area of the ship, all dressed for battle. Of course, just like everyone had agreed on, they were wearing hooded cloaks over their clothes to not alert anyone. Only Ethan was not wearing one because he needed to show his face so that the spies watching over their flying ship would follow him and Hecate, allowing Nicole and the others to leave the flying ship undetected. "Is everyone ready?" Ethan asked. "Yes." "Bottoms up," Ethan said as he raised the potion in his hand. Everyone, with the exception of Merrick and Connell, drank their potion and transformed into the opposite gender. "Hey, pretty lady, how about a good luck kiss?" Lyle said as she wrapped her arms around Ethan's waist. Lyle was a very attractive lady, so she was just as handsome as a man. Even so, that didn't change the fact that she liked to tease Ethan and push her luck a bit in the hope that she would be able to steal a kiss from him. But to her surprise, it seemed that Ethan was feeling generous right now. "Okay, but only on my cheek," Ethan replied before covering his lips with both hands. "Don't do anything funny or else." Lyle, who understood that she might not easily get another opportunity, didn't hesitate to kiss Ethan's cheeks. But before she pulled back, she decided to take a bonus and kissed his forehead as well. Looking very satisfied, Lyle stepped back with a silly grin on her face. Ethan, who had been kissed 3 times, didn't seem to mind and even looked unfazed by Lyle's actions. Nicole then approached Ethan and gave him a kiss on his right cheek, which he returned as well. After they had a heart-to-heart talk, their relationship returned to how it was in the past. Although Ethan was now more conscious of Nicole being a lady, he no longer felt overly anxious about having a bit of skinship with her. "Remember to give us the signal if things get out of hand," Nicole said. "We'll come running as fast as we can." Ethan nodded. "I will." The young man then shifted his attention to Merrick and gave him an order. "Stay in the flying ship and prepare to set sail anytime." Ethan nodded. "If a battle ensues, we might need to flee to prevent being captured by the enemy. When that happens, I want our ship to be ready to disembark at the soonest time possible." "Yes, young master." Merrick bowed respectfully. "I will see to it that we can leave at a moment's notice." "Good." Ethan nodded. "Everyone, let's start the mission." Now Godfrey, who was currently inside his manor, arched an eyebrow after his subordinate, who was keeping watch on Ethel's flying ship, sent him a message using a long-distance artifact. "The young lady has just left her flying ship and seems to be flying eastward," Godfrey's subordinate reported. "There are other observers who are following her as we speak. I am doing the same, but I am guessing that she won't travel far." "Good," Godfrey replied. "Follow her. I will be there shortly." "Yes, my lord." After the communication ended, Godfrey went to his cabinet and chose one of his most dashing attires in preparation to meet the young lady, whom he and Prince Isaac had set their sights on. However, he never truly thought of the prince as anything aside from an insignificant insect that posed no threat to him whatsoever. For Godfrey, who had lived for hundreds of years, the usual forms of entertainment were utterly boring. The only pastime he was passionate about was his desire for conquest. Not a conquest of lands, but of beautiful ladies with powerful bloodlines. Godfrey even thought of it as a game. He never forced the ladies to surrender to him, nor did he use any dirty tricks to make them climb onto his bed. Even those whom his men had captured were unharmed and were given the chance to return to their homes with his help. But under the condition that they could resist his courtship for a month. Of course, when he started doing this, Godfrey failed many times. But with each failure, he learned how to make the ladies lower their guard and their skirts at the same time. For him, those were only games. But Ethel was different. Although he did his best to control his emotions, his bloodline and instincts were screaming at him to possess her. He understood that she was a very special existence because even his bloodline, which had come from a progenitor, stirred every time he gazed at the young lady who went by the name Ethel. "A midnight tryst doesn't sound so bad," Godfrey muttered as he looked at his reflection in the mirror. "Fortunately, there is no moon, so this hunt will be more fun than usual." The vampire lord then opened the window of his room and jumped out of it with a devilish smile on his face. A moment later, he disappeared under the cover of darkness transforming into countless bats, and headed to the place where the young lady had planned to wait for him. Meanwhile, Nicole, Lyle, and Connell finally entered the city and headed in the direction where Nicole's tracking charm was giving a signal. Their mission was to capture the people who had stalked Ethan during the day and pry out the answers that they needed, so they could find where Godfrey was staying inside the city of Cashel. "I'll talk," a man with a scar on his face shouted. "Spare me." "Look at you, screaming like a girl," Lyle sneered. "Were you hoping that someone would hear you? Sorry to disappoint you, but no one is coming. But since you annoy me, I'll beat you up a bit more." No more. I apologize. No more, please." The man crumpled on the ground with blood seeping from the corner of his lips. A second later, Lyle's foot stepped on the back of the man's hand, further pinning him to the ground. "Listen, I'll give you only one chance, okay?" Lyle said. "If you lie, I'll smash your head like a watermelon." Lyle then unceremoniously flipped the man's body using her foot, making him look at her. Tears and snot were already running down the man's face, making even Connell, who was already used to his sister's antics, shake his head helplessly. "First, you tell me who your leader is," Lyle asked. It's Lord Godfrey," the scar-faced man replied. "I serve Lord Godfrey." "And where does he live?" Lyle inquired. "The biggest manor on the 13th Street in the second level of the city," the scar-faced man replied. "So you're also a member of the Bloodfangs?" Lyle crossed her arms over her chest. "What kind of activity does your cult do?" "How did you know, The one asking questions here is me. You will only answer. Do anything else and you will get hurt, understand? Forgive me. Have mercy." Nicole, who was using a type of magic that let her tell lies from truth, gave Lyle a nod. Although this magic wasn't perfect and only relied on the heartbeat and body language of the person, most interrogators still used it because it was better than nothing. Of course, torture was also an option, which was why Lyle decided to beat the man first before asking questions. Her strategy was simple. The only way to make someone with a tight lip talk was to punch them repeatedly until they started talking. Lyle and Nicole both questioned the man before knocking him out completely. After that, Lyle tossed the man aside, making him fall onto another man whom they had interrogated earlier. Nicole then pointed her wand at the man's head, and a silver thread flew out of it before dispersing into particles of light. "That spell sure is handy," Lyle commented. "Too bad, it can only take out memories that happened half an hour ago." "Let's go," Nicole replied. "Now I'm starting to understand how big their organization is and how they operate." "Here, they all give the same answers, so it might be true," Connell commented. "But let's capture one more. If their answers are the same, then we can return to the airship and wait for everyone to return." Nicole and Lyle nodded in agreement. The three then left the deserted alley, leaving the two unconscious men to have a nice nap. "I just hope that nothing bad happens to Ethan and Hecate," Nicole thought as she led the way to capture the third person she had cast a tracking spell on. Although she was a bit worried about Ethan fighting against a demigod with Hecate, she was a little assured by his promise to contact her through the bracelet he had given her as a gift. While the first team was busy interrogating people, Ethan and Hecate stood beside the lake and looked up at the starry sky. The two of them were chatting casually and talking about random things about the academy. They could sense the presence of a few people who were hiding in the darkness and paying close attention to them. Fortunately, none of them seemed to have the intention of making contact with them, and frankly, Ethan preferred it that way. An hour later, the two of them heard bats screeching, making the two of them exchange a knowing glance with each other. Both of them pretended like they hadn't heard anything and continued to chat. But 3 minutes later, they heard the sound of footsteps headed in their direction. Although there is no moon tonight, the stars are exceptionally beautiful. A devilishly handsome man with short blonde hair and blue eyes that glowed faintly in the darkness walked in their direction. "But their beauty falls short when compared to you, Lady Ethel. If I were given a choice, I'd rather look at your face for eternity than the stars in the sky." Ethan and Hecate almost cringed after hearing Godfrey's pickup lines. Fortunately, they were able to control their expression and eyed the approaching man with calm expressions on their faces. "I'm sure you say that to all the ladies, Lord Godfrey," Ethel replied. "Just call me Godfrey, Lady Ethel," Godfrey replied. "Mentioning my title makes us sound distant, but we truly aren't close." Ethel arched an eyebrow. For now. Godfrey smiled. But I'm sure I will be able to close that distance if you give me the chance. As if he'll give you a chance, Hecate thought, before putting herself between Ethan and the vampire lord. Don't step any closer, Lord Godfrey. My mistress doesn't like it when people get too close to her. Oh, is that so? Godfrey stopped 2 meters away from Hecate, who was standing in front of Ethan. My apologies. I hope you are not offended, my lady. I'm not, Ethel stated. So what brings you here this late at night, Lord Godfrey? A sigh escaped the vampire lord's lips. He had already asked the young beauty to stop adding the word Lord to his name, but it seemed that it wouldn't be happening anytime soon. I usually go on late-night strolls around this area, Godfrey answered. Seeing you here to admire this beautiful scenery must be fate. Perhaps, Ethel smiled faintly. Why do you seem guarded against me, my lady? Godfrey inquired. Did I offend you earlier when you were having a tour with Prince Isaac? No, Ethel replied. But he did say something quite peculiar about you. And that is? Godfrey arched an eyebrow. When Ethel was about to leave the city, he decided to stay in the restaurant, so he didn't know what they talked about along the way. He said you're much older than you appear to be, Ethel said. He added that maybe you are using some kind of magic to hide your true age. A chuckle escaped Godfrey's lips before he snapped his fingers. Suddenly, a wave of power spread in their surroundings, causing Hecate to almost take a fighting stance. However, Ethan placed his hand over her shoulder, stopping her completely. There are many pests around, and I don't want them overhearing our discussion, Godfrey stated. Please give me a few minutes to clear up the trash. Snapping his fingers a second time, countless bats attacked the observers who were looking at them from a distance, forcing them to retreat. Although Ethan and Hecate couldn't hear the screams that were coming from the trees around them, due to Godfrey setting up a soundproof barrier, they could tell that something was happening to the people who had followed them from the airship. A few minutes later, a faint smile appeared on Godfrey's face. The pests are no longer around, Godfrey said. Now then, what were you saying to me earlier, Lady Ethel? Something about my age? Ethan didn't know if he had stepped on a landmine or not, but he thought that this was a good opportunity to get to know the vampire lord, who was looking at him with an amused smile on his devilishly handsome face. Prince Isaac said that you are much older than you appear to be, Ethel said. Is that true? Well, do you not like mature and more experienced men, Lady Ethel? Godfrey asked back with a smile. I fall under that category. Pas. Ethan didn't know what kind of answer he was supposed to give the vampire lord, who was oozing with confidence. Clearly he wasn't lying when he said that he had more experience. After all, it was true that Godfrey's approach to women was as suave as his looks. Seeing that the young beauty had become speechless with his reply, another chuckle escaped Godfrey's lips. It sounded playful, teasing even. If not for the fact that Ethan knew whom he was dealing with, he might have thought of the vampire lord as a happy-go-lucky person who wouldn't hurt a fly. But since he knew what he was, he kept his guard up and spoke his mind. If you're really as old as Prince Isaac said, I wonder why you're still not married, Ethel said. Someone as good-looking as Lord Godfrey would not have a hard time finding beautiful women to be his wives, no. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, Godfrey replied. But I will have to agree that you are right, Lady Ethel. There were indeed ladies who asked me if I wished to marry them, but I turned them down. You see, I have high standards. As much as I do appreciate women and have often partaken in a memorable night with them, I haven't found the special someone whom I want to spend eternity with. Ethel smiled faintly. Really? Did you really not even consider any of those women as a potential wife? It seems that Lady Ethel is very interested in my love life. Do you perhaps want to become my special someone? Godfrey grinned, but Ethel didn't reply and kept the smile on her face. Well, I guess we can close the distance between us if I tell you more about me, Godfrey said. So I will tell you about that one time when I went to seek a wife in distant lands. It was a place far from the lands of the Milesians, located all the way across the ocean. There is no doubt that it is one of the most memorable trips I've had, perhaps because it ended in an unexpected manner. The vampire lord looked up at the starry sky as if recalling the memories of the past. There was a particular lady hailed as the saintess of a new order recently founded to worship a deity called the Tidebringer, Godfrey stated. Although I don't know much about him, I've heard tales about his wonderful feats in the lands of Alastor. According to the people of that time, the first saintess of the order was not only beautiful, but she was also an exceptionally powerful sorceress. Mind you, back then, there were only very few individuals who could truly call themselves powerful. Out of curiosity, I decided to take a long journey across the sea to meet such a person. I even thought that she was the one that I've been waiting for. Ethan frowned after listening to the vampire lord's words, because he remembered that the demigod had appeared at the Temple of the Tidebringer during the event inside the Painting of Enlightenment. The Painting of Enlightenment connected the past, present, and possible futures. Since Godfrey appeared at that time, there was indeed a possibility that he personally visited the Temple of the Tidebringer in the Magdar Kingdom. Hecate remained silent and waited for the vampire lord to continue his story. Her fragmented memories were still hazy inside her head, so she was hoping that Godfrey could say something that might connect these pieces together. Unfortunately, the first saintess was no longer there when I arrived, Godfrey sighed. She had left the temple a month before I arrived and hadn't been seen since then. A shiver ran down Ethan's spine after hearing the vampire's words. If Godfrey truly arrived when Princess Ramona was still serving as the saintess of the Tidebringer, he had no doubt in his mind that the vampire lord might have done something to force the princess to marry him. Fortunately, she had already left before he arrived. Ethan felt relief in his heart. However, the vampire was still not finished with his story. But since I already traveled a great distance to see her, and I was curious to know where she ended up, I decided to do an investigation of my own. Godfrey continued his tale, not even glancing at the two people who both had conflicted expressions on their faces. You see, I have all the time in the world, and I thought that working on this particular case might become a rewarding experience. I set off on a wild goose chase. I visited all the places where Princess Ramona was last seen, and she had covered many miles on her journey. From the great mountains of Escalor to the undercities of Valfagor, the princess's trail led me to them. I have faced miles upon miles of unknown territory and encountered perilous situations. Back then, I wondered where the princess was going. It was as if she was looking for something. While I don't know what she was searching for, I could not help but be surprised by the great lengths she had taken to look for it. A sigh escaped Godfrey's lips as he closed his eyes. It was rather easy to find her trail since many people remembered her and her companion. You see, two beautiful ladies traveling together will certainly catch the attention of many. According to the people I talked to, the saintess was accompanied by a beauty with long dark blue hair and eyes as blue as the sea. Knowing that she had company on that dangerous journey brought a sense of relief to my heart. After all, even I, who consider myself to be very powerful, had a very hard time following their trail. A moment of silence passed as Godfrey stopped talking. It seemed that the particular memory had made him a bit emotional, so he decided to regain his composure first, before continuing his tale. I didn't know back then that this journey, which I started on a whim, would bring me to the edge of the world, the final frontier before the abyss of nothingness, Godfrey said, almost in a whisper. I wasn't prepared for such a thing, and I didn't expect to meet someone like that at the borders of the abyss. Godfrey then glanced at the two teenagers who were listening to his tale and said the words both of them didn't expect to hear. Standing before me and holding the soulless body of Princess Ramona was none other than the progenitor of magic, and those who know her name refer to her as Hecate. Standing before me and holding the soulless body of Princess Ramona was none other than the progenitor of magic, and those who know her name refer to her as Hecate. Godfrey's gaze landed on Ethel, as if wanting to know what kind of expression she would have after hearing his story. He thought that she would look surprised after hearing his story, or become curious about the progenitor. The vampire lord even thought that she would give him a doubtful gaze, as if thinking that every word that he said was a lie. He had also considered that if ordinary people heard his tale, they might think that he was just making up a grand story in order to give them a form of entertainment. But out of all the expressions that Godfrey was thinking, he didn't expect that he would only see sadness on the young beauty's face. Yes, Ethan looked sad, extremely sad after hearing Godfrey's tale. He didn't doubt his words from the beginning because he knew that the vampire lord wouldn't gain anything by lying to him. The young man had always wondered what had happened to the princess after she stepped down from her position as saintess. The only clue they had was that she went off on a journey on her own, never to be seen again. Ethan felt pain in his chest, as if his heart was breaking. He finally knew what happened to the princess whom he left behind in the past. All he wanted was for her to find happiness and live her life to the fullest. But even that wish wasn't meant to be. What happened next? Ethan asked, almost in a whisper. After you found her, what happened next? Godfrey didn't answer right away and took a step forward. Seeing the sadness on Ethel's face made him want to give her a hug and tell her that everything was going to be fine, but at the same time he took a step forward, Hecate took a fighting stance. Take one more step and I will attack, Hecate said icily. I already told you, my lady doesn't like it when strangers are being too clingy to her. Godfrey frowned as he shifted his attention to Lady Ethel's servant, who seemed to be playing the role of her bodyguard. Suddenly, the corner of the handsome man's lips rose a bit as he thought of a wonderful idea. If you wish to hear the rest of the story, my lady, how about you and I have afternoon tea together? Godfrey inquired. My manor is very beautiful, you know? You can even bring this servant and your guardian with you. I don't particularly mind. Ethan, who wanted to hear the rest of Princess Ramona's story, found himself in a dilemma. On one hand, he wanted to know what happened next. On the other hand, he was very wary of going to a place where Godfrey had complete dominion. It was highly possible that he would set up a trap in order to capture him or subjugate his companions. But before Ethan could even make a reply, Hecate cut him off and answered the vampire lord instead. Telling a story and stopping at the important part just to invite my lady to have an afternoon tea with you is a very low blow, Hecate said in contempt. A lowly move for a noble. My lady, a man like this shouldn't be trusted because he has ulterior motives. It will be best to reject his invitation. Ulterior motives? Godfrey smiled. Yes, I do have ulterior motives, and that is to get close to Lady Ethel. If a story is enough to make her agree to an afternoon meeting with me, then I wouldn't mind telling more entertaining stories about my travels in Midgard. Just as Hecate and Godfrey faced off against each other, Ethan finally spoke what was on his mind. My retainer is right, Lord Godfrey, Ethan said coldly. I also think that stopping at the important part of the story is a very low blow, which I find very disappointing. I expected more from someone of your stature. Seeing that his plans seemed to have backfired, Godfrey decided to do some damage control for the time being. I admit that I was in the wrong, my lady, Godfrey replied. It is indeed a bad way of asking to have some private time with you. So please, allow me to continue my story to make up for my wrongs. Will you accept my apology? Ethan didn't answer, but he still nodded his head. He made sure that he looked displeased, which worked wonders as Godfrey chuckled awkwardly before he continued his tale. Like I mentioned earlier, when I arrived, I found the progenitor of magic holding onto the soulless body of Princess Ramona, Godfrey stated. As you may or may not know, progenitors stand at the apex of the world and hold powers far greater than any mortal and immortal in the world. Even if I am confident with my abilities, I dare not challenge such an individual, especially Hecate, who was known as the founder of magicians. She is able to call upon all the elements of the world, and with a single wave of her hand, someone like me would probably turn into stone. Godfrey smiled faintly. Fortunately, she wasn't feeling bloodthirsty when I saw her, and even looked somewhat sad as she held onto the body of the princess, who had lost her soul. She then glanced at my direction and asked me why I had entered her domain. Naturally, I told her that I was on a quest to search for the princess, whom I had chosen to be my wife candidate. After that, she asked me what my name was, so I gave her my name, Godfrey Vlad Tepes, but after hearing my name, she only shook her head and told me that I wasn't the one that the princess loved. I had been traveling for months in order to find Princess Ramona, and when I did, I was told something like that. But instead of feeling hurt, I was more curious to know the name of the person whom the princess loved. When I asked the progenitor this question, I prepared myself to be turned down. But perhaps she wanted someone to know why the princess traveled so far, only to end up like that. She decided to answer my question. Is she? Godfrey sighed and lightly brushed his hair with his right hand, trying to make himself look cool to the young beauty, but failing to see any reaction from her. Clearly, Ethel was more interested in Princess Ramona's story than looking at the vampire lord's handsome face. Princess Ramona loved a person so much that she decided to accept a gamble with Hecate, Godfrey stated. Unfortunately, she lost that gamble, and the price for losing was her soul. Such a sad tale. A sad ending for a heroine, who tried to overcome all odds just to be with the person she loved, but it was not meant to be. Listen well, and listen closely, Lady Ethel. The name of the man responsible for such a tragic ending was Ethan Gremory. The vampire lord spat as if saying the name of the person made him feel disgusted. That person left the princess behind, not caring about her in the slightest, Godfrey said in disdain. How could he leave such a person behind? Someone who loved him very much. After leaving World's End, I went to look for that bastard, and searched high and low for any clues regarding him. But I didn't find anyone who went by the name Ethan Gremory. I even hired a powerful seer to find him, but she only said that the person I was looking for was either dead or didn't exist. Godfrey shrugged. That princess was truly pitiful. I don't know if the person she loved really died or not, but one thing is clear. Princess Ramona's soul cannot cross over to the afterlife even if she wants to, because the progenitor of magic owns her soul. Perhaps, even now, somewhere at the edge of the world, that pitiful princess soul still remains in Hecate's hands. Ethan's body swayed, as if he had momentarily lost the strength in his legs. Fortunately, Hecate was there to catch him and support his body. Are you all right? Hecate asked. Yes, Ethan replied. His face was pale, and his eyes were filled with sadness and guilt. Knowing that Ethan was not in the right state of mind to deal with the vampire lord, Hecate decided that it would be best to return to the flying ship and let him rest for the time being. Thank you for finishing the story, Lord Godfrey, Hecate said. But the exhaustion of our journey seems to have finally caught up to my lady. I will take her back to our ship so that she can rest. Oh dear. Godfrey stepped forward. It is my fault for telling her such a sad story. Please, let me help you take her back to your accommodation. It's the least I can do. No need, Hecate replied. You have done enough. After saying those words, Hecate summoned her flying broom and helped Ethan to sit on it. She then sat beside him and urged the flying broom to take flight, leaving behind the vampire lord, who had a displeased look on his face. So many insects are getting in my way, Godfrey commented, but it seems that I discovered something good. Lady Ethel likes these kinds of stories. Godfrey pondered a bit as he tried to recall some of the epic adventures of his youth, which were several times better than the story that he had shared with the young beauty tonight. Perhaps a lighter and more action-packed story will be better, Godfrey thought. That settles it. I'll tell her the story of how I saved a princess from a dragon next time. I'm sure that she will like it. A few minutes later, Hecate's flying broom landed on the deck of the flying ship. Merrick, who saw how pale Ethan's face was, thought that he had fought against the vampire lord and lost. However, Hecate told him that he was just not feeling well, and asked Merrick to keep guard and make sure that no outside forces intruded on their flying ship. She then took Ethan back to his room, but as soon as she entered the cabin, Lilith jumped out of the young man's shadow and opened the door of the room for them. The catkin had heard Godfrey's story from beginning to end, and understood that Ethan was suffering right now. She had heard the young man's stories about Princess Ramona, and knew that he cared about her very much. Knowing her tragic fate might have been a shock to him, Lilith thought. But Lilith glanced at Hecate, who shared the same name as the progenitor of magic. She was also a saintess of the Order of the Tidebringer, and also carried Princess Ramona's family name. If one coincidence piled on top of another, it was very hard not to feel suspicious about it.
Fuck you.
Perhaps, Lilith stared at Hecate, who was sitting on top of Ethan's bed and holding his hand. Ethan's face was still a little pale, but it was much better than earlier. After giving it some thought, Lilith sighed and left the room, so that her master and the saintess could have some private time together. She didn't go far and simply stood by the door to keep guard, and prevent others from disturbing the two of them. Inside the room, Ethan was doing his best to stay awake. He didn't know why, but he suddenly felt mentally and emotionally exhausted, making his eyes grow heavy. It was as if his body wanted to shut down for a bit so that it could recover properly. Sleep for now, Hecate said. I'll keep watch and make sure you are safe. Thank you, Ethan replied, before closing his eyes to rest. It didn't even take half a minute before he fell into sleep's embrace. His guilt, sadness, and regret weighed on his mind, and he hoped that when he woke up, he would find the strength to face the truth that he had discovered. Sebastian and Ethan's other half watched the two teenagers and sighed in their heart. They were Ethan's greatest critics and his greatest supporters. Just like how the young man wished that Princess Ramona could live a happy and fulfilling life, they wanted the same for him. They wanted to see him grow up and have a family. They wanted to see his kids, as well as see how he would spoil them as their father. I just hope he doesn't feel too guilty after hearing Princess Ramona's fate, Sebastian commented. Yeah. Ethan's other half nodded. The two of them then stared at Hecate, who was still under the effect of the potion. Both of them knew that Ethan had also managed to connect the dots. But whether the person who was holding his hand right now was still the princess he knew in the past or not, would only be revealed when the young man took that step and asked the questions that would help heal their wounded hearts. After their mission ended, Nicole, Lyle, and Connell returned to the flying ship to report their findings. They had captured a few of Godfrey's subordinates and managed to get answers from their tight lips with a little bit of effort from Lyle. But when they heard Merrick's report about Ethan returning looking somewhat pale, they immediately thought that the young man and Hecate had fought against Godfrey without informing them. Because of this, Nicole hurriedly went to see him to ask him what really happened. But instead of meeting Ethan, he found Lilith standing guard on the door with her arms crossed over her chest. "Master is resting," Lilith said. "You can't see him right now." "Tell me what happened," Nicole replied. "Did you guys fight against Godfrey?" "No," Lilith answered. "They just talked." "They just talked?" Nicole frowned. "Then why did Merrick say that he looked very pale?" Lilith hesitated a bit, because Nicole was not the only one who was standing in front of Ethan's cabin. "He learned about something that made him very feel sad and guilty," Lilith said after carefully organizing her thoughts. "I can't tell you about it because it's his private matter. However, if you really want to know the truth, you should ask Master when he wakes up." Right now, Hecate is inside the room, looking after him. "I'm sorry, but I can't let you disturb him right now." The frown on Nicole's face deepened, but she didn't pursue the topic any longer. She knew that once morning came, Ethan would give them an explanation. With that in mind, she decided to wait until then. Lyle was very curious about what happened to Ethan, but since Lilith was blocking the way, she decided that it wasn't worth it to stir up trouble, so she left to rest in her room. Inside the room, Hecate sat on top of Ethan's bed and looked at the young man, who was sleeping with a pained expression on his face. She had listened to Godfrey's story like Ethan did, and frankly, things made more sense to her now. Even so, she only understood half of it. Her other half was somewhere out there waiting for her. No, not waiting for only her, but waiting for the two of them to come. Hecate sighed softly before lying on the bed beside Ethan and hugging his body. "Your body is colder than usual," Hecate thought, as she used the blanket to cover the two of them before once again wrapping her arms around Ethan to hold him close. She knew that the moment Ethan opened his eyes, he would ask her some questions. As to whether she could answer them or not, even Hecate didn't know. A sigh escaped her lips before closing her eyes to rest. Regardless of what would happen next, she knew that the sun would rise in the morning whether she liked it or not. Lilith, who was paying close attention to what was going on inside the room through her connection with Ethan, sighed in her heart. "Tomorrow," Lilith muttered, "the truth will be known tomorrow." When the first rays of the sun peeked over the horizon, Ethan slowly opened his eyes. His body felt as heavy as lead, as if he had undergone a great battle and fought until exhaustion. But no such battle took place. Even so, his body felt heavy. He believed this was a psychological reaction to the things he discovered last night. It didn't take long for him to realize that someone else was sleeping on the bed beside him. He glanced at the sleeping half-elf, whose beautiful face was familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. Although she had a few similarities with Princess Ramona, she didn't look like her, which made him remember the words that the princess had said in the Painting of Enlightenment. "Ethan, come and find me," Princess Ramona said before looking at the sun slowly rising over the horizon. "Do you remember that story that you told me in the past? About the princess who fell asleep, waiting for her prince to wake her up? Come and find me. Once you do, make sure to wake me up with a kiss. Until then, I will be like that princess sleeping, as I wait for my prince to find me. Where are you? Ethan asked. I'm very close to you, Princess Ramona replied with a smile. Close enough to touch, close enough to hold. Illumina and I made a bet, you know? Back then I was confident that I was going to win, but now, I'm not sure anymore. Thank you for the memory. I love you. But don't tell me that you love me. At least not now. Find me first, because if you don't find me soon, I will. I will find you, Ethan said firmly. I will. Of course you will, Princess Ramona sighed as her body started to turn into particles of light. After all, you've always kept your promise to me. I have done my best. I'll leave the rest to you, Ethan. Ethan felt as if a lump was stuck in his throat as he recalled that memory. Although he wasn't certain, he believed that the one talking to him back then wasn't an illusion made by the painting. No, he truly believed that it was Princess Ramona, and she had personally asked him to find her. Ethan slowly raised his hand and brushed back the strand of hair that covered Hecate's face. Last night, when he kissed her, he felt something familiar and wondered what it was. But now, he felt as if the answers he was looking for were within his reach. Ethan gently caressed the side of Hecate's face, doing his best to keep his emotions in check. A minute later, Hecate sleepily opened her eyes and looked at Ethan in a daze. She stared at him for a few seconds before moving closer to bury her face on his chest and closing her eyes for the second time. Ethan then wrapped his arms around her body and held her gently. He would give her 15 more minutes to sleep. After that, he would wake her up with a kiss and fulfill the promise he made in the painting of enlightenment. Ever since Hecate was born, she had been obsessed with a recurring dream that she had from time to time. In that dream, she saw a princess that was loved by many. Unfortunately, that's everything we gathered from our mission yesterday, Nicole said. So this means that although Godfrey is the head of the Bloodfangs, he doesn't really care about them. Ethan frowned. Right, Connell commented. It's more like the organization built themselves around Godfrey for protection and mutual cooperation. They supply him with tributes like treasures, gold, and women. Ever since Hecate was born, she had been obsessed with a recurring dream that she had from time to time. In that dream, she saw a princess that was loved by many. Unfortunately, a witch had put a curse on her, making her fall asleep for eternity. Many tried to find her, and yet they all fell before they arrived at her resting place. But one day, a handsome prince with long blue hair and blue eyes overcame the trials and arrived where she lay. He then gave her a kiss so sweet that it broke the curse and finally woke her up from her slumber. Hecate didn't know why she kept on having that recurring dream. She had seen the prince many times in her dreams, and yet she couldn't remember what he looked like after waking up. Still, she believed that she would know when that same thing happened to her. I think I found my prince, Hecate thought, as the handsome young man, who was lying beside her just moments ago, pressed his lips over hers and kissed her affectionately. She didn't know how a simple exchange of good morning led to such a development, but she wasn't complaining. When Ethan kissed her last night to recharge his magic reserves, the final puzzle piece that had been missing in Hecate's mind had fallen into place. Fractured memories had flowed inside her mind, telling her what she needed to know. But these memories were incomplete, and now she understood why. Ethan's kiss washed away all the remnants of sleep inside her head, replacing it with a certainty that she had been born for this moment. When their kiss ended, she took the initiative to kiss him back as if what he had given her wasn't enough. No, it wasn't enough. How could a single kiss compensate for a lifetime of regret? How could a single kiss compensate for a lifetime of heartbreak? How could a single kiss compensate for a sacrifice made out of love? But Hecate knew that they had just arrived at the starting point. This fairy tale was far from the happy end that she hoped for. The storyteller who was supposed to say, "and they lived happily ever after," was nowhere to be seen. The reason? Because the story was not yet complete. As Hecate pulled back and gazed into Ethan's eyes brimming with guilt and sadness, she couldn't help but cup his face and plant a kiss on his forehead. "Ask," Hecate said firmly. She only said one word, but it was the word that Ethan wanted to hear. "Are you Ramona?" Ethan asked. Hecate hesitated, but still nodded in the end. "I am Ramona, but I'm merely the half that completes her." "Half?" Ethan did his best to keep his voice from breaking. "What do you mean by that?" He had hoped that Hecate was indeed Ramona, but it seemed that it wasn't as simple as he imagined it to be. Seeing the pain in his eyes, Hecate nodded and told him what she knew. "Do you remember Godfrey's story yesterday?" Hecate asked. "The progenitor of magic, who has the same name as me, held Princess Ramona's soulless body in her arms. That soulless body is me. I am the vessel that holds Princess Ramona's soul and allows her to live in this world. Mortals have different kinds of memories. Memories of the soul, memories of the body, and memories of the heart. I possess the memories of Princess Ramona's body and heart, but my rebirth sealed them away." Ethan's eyes widened in shock because he wasn't expecting this answer from Hecate. If she was indeed born from Princess Ramona's body, it explained why she had similar features to the princess. Hecate, who didn't know what Ethan was thinking, continued her explanation. "Perhaps the progenitor of magic had a change of heart, so she decided to give us a chance. Although I say that I am only Ramona's vessel, the truth is that both of us are one and the same. I'm only able to move because my soul is connected to me directly through the weave of magic. What I see, she sees. What I feel, she feels. Even the words I'm saying now are words she wants to say to you. But we are not complete. Just like how she cannot live in this world without a vessel, I cannot live in this world without my soul. However, since the progenitor knew that she couldn't come to you, I was born to undertake this mission. Only when I reunite with my soul will we finally be complete. But for that to happen, you must find the progenitor of magic at World's End. Sadly, I no longer remember the path I chose to get there. But there's hope. There is another person who knows how to get there, and it is none other than Godfrey." Hecate closed her eyes before heaving a sigh. "But know this, Ethan. The progenitor of magic also sees what I see, hears what I hear, and feels what I feel. She had waited hundreds of years for the timelines to overlap with each other. If I were to regain a fraction of my memory by being kissed by you, I was supposed to tell you to look for her and gamble with your life on the line to reclaim our soul." Hecate once again opened her eyes and smiled sadly. "It will not be easy because one mistake, and you will end up like me," Hecate said sadly. "A vessel without a soul. But you know what, Ethan? The progenitor of magic also placed a memory of hers inside of me, which makes me feel fearful about something." About what?" Ethan asked as he gave Hecate's hand a light squeeze, assuring her that she could tell him everything. "Tell me." After a brief hesitation, Hecate nodded and told him what she knew. "She said that your vessel is unique, one that progenitors would fight for," Hecate said. "So if you gamble with your life and lose, Hecate will take over your body and become a being that would surpass a progenitor." Hecate's hands trembled as she cupped Ethan's face. "Frankly, my body and soul don't wish for you to face her," Hecate said. "Perhaps she made this arrangement to capture you, knowing that you will come to her willingly. She must know that, after hearing my story, you would definitely go find her." Ethan used his fingers to lightly brush the tears that were threatening to fall on the side of Hecate's eyes. "Well, she's not wrong," Ethan replied. "You said that she shares your senses, right? She can see what you see and hear what you hear?" "Yes," Hecate nodded. "Good." Ethan's face changed to one of determination. "Hecate, I'm coming for you, so make sure to keep Ramona's soul safe." The young lady's body trembled for a bit before the color of her pupils changed to a golden color. "Come, child," Hecate said in a teasing tone. "I'll wait for you at World's End. Ramona has already waited long enough. How long do you plan to keep her waiting?" "I'll be there as soon as I get my tour guide," Ethan answered. "It won't be long before I find you." Action speaks louder than words. Godfrey isn't a pushover who will obey you. If you want his help, you need to beat him first. But remember this, there are only a handful of methods that can make a demigod yield. Unless you have a way to bind him with words, winning against him is futile. Last but not the least, the body of this half-elf will deteriorate after a year. A body without a soul will not be able to last for a long time. If not for the fact that I made arrangements for her to be born as a half-elf, she would have perished a decade ago. And the moment this body dies, Ramona can kiss her happily ever after goodbye. I've already given her a chance. There won't be a second time. Goodbye for now, Ethan Gremory. If you survive your battle with Godfrey and manage to convince him to cooperate, we will eventually meet at the world's end. One last thing. Tell Ashmedai that if he interferes, I'll destroy Ramona's soul. You have been warned. After saying those words, Hecate fainted as the progenitor released her control over her body. Ethan carefully poured a small portion of a rejuvenation potion inside Hecate's mouth to help speed up her recovery. When she finally regained consciousness, she couldn't remember the fact that the progenitor of magic had possessed her body for a moment. I guess you succeeded in passing your message to her? Hecate said weakly. Yes, Ethan replied, as he planted a kiss on the young lady's forehead. Sleep for now, then let's have breakfast after an hour. Hecate nodded because she was feeling very weak after the progenitor had descended into her body. Although he felt that things had become complicated, Ethan had decided to find the progenitor of magic. If that was the only way that he could save the princess who had risked her life for his sake, he would not back down from the challenge, even if he had to face the progenitor of magic. That's everything we gathered from our mission yesterday, Nicole said. So this means that although Godfrey is the head of the Bloodfangs, he doesn't really care about them. Ethan frowned. Right, Connell commented. It's more like the organization built themselves around Godfrey for protection and mutual cooperation. They supply him with tributes like treasures, gold, and women, and in turn, he repays them with a few droplets of his blood to enhance their strength. However, the members of the Bloodfangs are not aware that the moment they absorb his blood willingly, their fate has already been sealed, Nicole added. He can kill them without mercy if they are no longer useful. Even then, the members of the Bloodfangs willingly took this risk in exchange for power. Godfrey is an easygoing leader, and he doesn't really care about their actions as long as they don't directly harm his interest. Ethan nodded in understanding before glancing at the faces of the people who had accompanied him on his journey. Originally, we came here to defeat Godfrey and make sure that he will no longer threaten us or the Academy, Ethan stated. But something came up, so there will be a change of plans. I intend to formally challenge Godfrey to a duel. You will fight him one-on-one? Lyle frowned. Isn't the original plan to team up against him because he is a demigod? That part of the plan doesn't change, Ethan replied. It'll be a group battle of 5 people. Godfrey can choose 4 more people to fight alongside him in this group battle. Now you're talking, Lyle grinned fearlessly. Don't worry, I'll beat the small fries as fast as I can before we team up to beat that vampire lord. Ethan nodded. However, we need to make him sign a binding contract made of magic. I will put 2 conditions in it. The first condition is that he will not do anything to harm Ethan Gremory, his family, friends, and acquaintances using direct or indirect means. The second condition is that he will guide me to World's End, the place where the progenitor of magic resides. Not everyone at the dining table looked at Ethan in surprise because this was the first time that they had heard this information. At World's End, Nicole narrowed her eyes. You want to meet the progenitor of magic? Why? Does that mean that you won't return to the Academy when we win the battle against Godfrey? You make it sound like winning against the demigod is already a done deal, Miss Nicole, Merrick commented. It will not be that easy. Of course, it will not be easy, Lyle said. But we have no intention of losing either, so it's more or less a done deal. Or are you perhaps saying that we're going to lose? That's not what I meant, Miss Lyle. Merrick shook his head. I understand. Lyle nodded. But this is a battle that we can't lose, so we have to win no matter what. Ethan nodded in agreement because this was indeed a battle that they couldn't lose. The young man then shifted his gaze to Nicole and answered her question. After beating Godfrey, I will travel with Hecate and Godfrey towards World's End, Ethan said. The rest of you can return to the Shire continent. I will inform Professor Reinhardt later about this sudden change in plans. Can you tell us what made you want to meet the progenitor of magic? Nicole inquired. I don't know much about progenitors, but aren't they dangerous? They are, Ethan answered. That's why I can't risk taking you guys with me, so after we defeat Godfrey, all of you should return to the Shire continent. Then why do you want to meet her? I intend to bargain with her. She has something I need. Nicole held Ethan's gaze, and the young man stared back at her. It's that important? Nicole asked. It's very important to me, Ethan replied. Hecate, who was listening to the conversation, was looking at her hands that were resting on her lap. Although it was dangerous, Ethan didn't hesitate to tell her that he would go and meet the progenitor of magic in order to reclaim her soul. She felt very touched, hearing how firm the young man was in his decision to brave the dangers for her sake. Seeing Ethan's determined gaze, Nicole sighed before pinching the bridge of her nose. Fine, but I'm going with you, Nicole said. I've never seen a progenitor in my lifetime, and this might be the only chance I get to see one. If we survive, I'm sure that this will be a story worth bragging about. Right, Lyle nodded. I'm sure Father will feel envious knowing that I've met a progenitor before him. Yeah, wait, we're going with them? Connell looked at his sister in disbelief. Are you serious? I'm going with them, Lyle replied, as if this was the most natural thing to do. You can go back to the Shire continent alone. Connell blinked once, then twice before shaking his head. There was no way he would leave Lyle to go to World's End on her own. I didn't sign up for this, but I guess I have no choice but to see it through till the end. Connell crossed his arms over his chest. What makes you think that I will let you travel alone? If I return by myself, even if I don't mention where you're going, Father will definitely give me a good nagging for leaving you behind. Lyle smiled mischievously because she could already imagine her father nagging her brother for coming home without her. So when will we have this duel with Godfrey? Nicole took a sip of the coffee in her cup. The sooner the better, right? We will fight him at noon, Ethan replied. I've already written the challenge as well as the conditions of the duel. Merrick has passed the letter to one of Godfrey's many subordinates who have been keeping watch over our ship. I'm sure we will get a reply soon. Are you sure he's going to agree to that challenge? Connell asked. I'm not sure, Ethan answered, but I told him that we would be leaving today. Lyle chuckled because she understood what Ethan was planning. So you're using yourself as bait, Lyle stated. You have given him 2 conditions, so it's only normal that he asks for 2 conditions as well. If he wins the duel, I'm sure one of his demands is for you to stay and become his woman. I can see that particular bait working very well. Well, on the off chance that he doesn't agree, what should we do? Nicole inquired. If he doesn't agree to the duel, then we go with Plan B, Ethan answered. What is Plan B? Connell arched an eyebrow. Ethan smiled faintly. The original plan, of course. Everyone smiled at the same time because the original plan was simple. Beat the crap out of Godfrey, and make sure that he wouldn't be able to harm an innocent being ever again. Although this plan wouldn't be easy to execute since they might have to fight Godfrey inside the city, he believed that this would not come to pass. Ethan might have only spent an incredibly short time with Godfrey, but he understood that the Vampire Lord was someone who was very open and honest with his desires. You plan to meet the progenitor of magic, Hecate? Professor Reinhardt looked at Ethan's image on the crystal ball in front of him in shock after hearing the young man's report. Yes, Professor, Ethan replied. I'm sorry for suddenly doing something very selfish. Ethan, I'm sure you already know that progenitors are beings who stand at the apex of the world, Professor Reinhardt stated. And one of the most powerful of them all is the progenitor of magic, the being who introduced magic to the world. She will not be an easy opponent to fight. I have fought the avatar of a progenitor once. An L didn't stand a chance against it. I know full well how powerful a progenitor is. The headmaster of Brynhilder Academy sighed because he didn't know if he was feeling worried or feeling envious of Ethan. Worried because the young man was going to meet someone who stood at the apex of the world. Envious because all the powerful wizards and witches would love to have the opportunity to meet the progenitor of magic, who had introduced the power of magic to the world. Ethan, no matter what you do, please don't antagonize her, Professor Reinhardt said. I want all of you to return to the Academy in one piece. That's the plan, Professor. Ethan nodded. I plan to return safely with the others. Professor Reinhardt sighed, internally to accompany Ethan on his travels. If he had come with the young man, he would at least have some peace of mind, for he knew that the professor would do his best to keep Ethan, Nicole, and Hecate safe. Report to me once your duel with Godfrey ends, Professor Reinhardt gave the young man a stern look. Also, don't lose to that Vampire Lord. Do you hear me? Astutely. Yes, Professor. Ethan pressed his fist over his chest. I will not lose. I promise. Professor Reinhardt nodded before giving the young man some advice before cutting the connection. Professor Barrett, who was also in the room with the headmaster, didn't say anything from beginning to end. He simply listened to the conversation and kept his thoughts inside his head. "What do you think?" Professor Reinhardt asked. "Can you catch up with them using that method?" "I think it will be too late even if I leave for Midgard right now," Professor Barrett replied. "By the time I get there, everything will have ended. I should have asked you to accompany them. I also wish you had. Now, I have missed the chance to meet the progenitor of magic." The two old men sighed at the same time. If not for the fact that they were also busy in the academy, in preparation for the threats in the future, they might have accompanied Ethan on his journey to Midgard. All inside the magic pouch that Professor Reinhardt had given him. Since he was about to do something important and wouldn't be returning to the academy in the short term, he needed to inform the headmaster about it. Just as he was about to look for Hecate, he heard a knock on his cabin door. After opening it, the first person he saw was Nicole, who had a calm expression on her face. "Godfrey sent a letter." Nicole opened it to check its contents. There was only one line written on it, and that was, "I'll be there," which made Ethan breathe a sigh of relief. He then shifted his gaze to Nicole and handed the letter to her as well. After reading the contents of the letter, Nicole returned it to. "Should I tell the others?" Nicole asked. "Please do." Nicole returned it to. "Should I tell the others?" Nicole asked. "Please do," Ethan replied. "I will meditate for a bit to clear my mind." "Okay," Nicole nodded. "I will meditate for a bit to clear my mind." "Okay," Nicole nodded. "I'll come back an hour before the agreed time." As soon as Nicole left the room, Ethan sat cross-legged on the floor and went inside his sea of consciousness, where Sebastian and his other half were waiting for him. "Remember this, Ethan. Only use your domain if Godfrey uses his domain against you," Ethan's other half stated. "Which one should I use against him?" Ethan inquired out of curiosity. "Which one should I use against him?" Ethan inquired out of curiosity. It's a well-known fact that vampires are not very good swimmers, you know? They cannot cross over running water," Ethan commented. "But in the painting of Enlightenment, Godfrey flew over the sea." "Well, he's a special kind of vampire," Sebastian stated. "But he still can't swim." "I don't know about that," Ethan rubbed his chin. "He looks like someone who could swim. Also, have you prepared the binding contract you mentioned to me earlier?" "Yes," Ethan's other half replied. "I already have it." Ethan's other half had communicated with Ashmedai a few hours ago and asked him how to make a contract that was strong enough to bind a demigod. Even if Ethan managed to win against Godfrey, if they were not able to make him honor the agreement, the win would be useless. The young man then glanced at the contract and read its contents before nodding his head in satisfaction. "Thank you," Ethan said. "I just need to drop my blood here, right?" "Yes," Ethan's other half replied. "As for Godfrey, a drop of his blood will also be enough to bind him to this contract. But remember this, Ethan. Godfrey might have the mindset that you guys have no chance of winning. It will be best to end the battle before he can use his trump cards. Make sure that Hecate will be able to land her blow as soon as possible and finish the battle before the Vampire Lord realizes what hit him." Ethan nodded and opened his eyes to reality. "We still have 2 hours," Ethan thought as he glanced at the clock hanging on the wall. "I better use that time to craft potions." Ethan was anxious about his upcoming fight against Godfrey. This was the first time that he would be fighting against a real demigod, and not the fake one inside the painting of Enlightenment. Knowing that Godfrey would be much stronger than he was in the painting, he decided to talk to Hecate later and ask her to initiate her strongest attack as soon as possible to cripple the Vampire Lord, who was currently smiling from ear to ear. Godfrey was thinking of ways he could create an opportunity to have some private time with Ethel, so this challenge was the perfect opportunity to do that. Although he was confused as to why the young lady stated those conditions in the letter, he believed that she was just worried that he was still planning to hunt down the hateful human, whom he had tried to look for in the past. Well, I guess completing that story wasn't in vain. Godfrey thought as he pulled on his robes in preparation for his upcoming duel. He would be spending some quality time with the beautiful lady and making her squirm on top of his bed. Ethan stared at Godfrey, who looked perfectly fine despite being under the sun. He was a vampire lord, so he should have been weak when outside in the day. But perhaps the bloodline of the progenitor that was flowing in his veins made it so that the noonday sun didn't have any effect on him. Just as Ethan expected, Godfrey came alone, not bothering to bring any of his subordinates with strength. Also, he wanted to impress at the party on his own. That way, she would realize how strong he was and maybe she might fall for him in the end. At least that was what Godfrey was thinking. He wasn't aware that Ethan and his team already knew that he was a demigod and understood that he was very strong. But they didn't plan on telling him this to his face. After all, the element of surprise was in their hands, and if they succeeded in landing the decisive blow before the Vampire Lord could use his trump cards, it would be their win. "You've come, Lord Godfrey," Ethel said with a smile. "My lady, how many times must I tell you to not call me Lord again?" Godfrey replied, as he returned Ethel that as one of the conditions if I win. "What do you think?" "If it's what you wish to add, then I am fine with it, Lord Godfrey." "Surely you jest. I will not waste my condition on something so trivial." Godfrey glanced at the contract in his hand and understood that it was the real deal. It was something that could bind him, but he wasn't too worried. There were only two conditions that were listed on the contract for if he lost the duel. The first was to take Ethel to World's End, where the progenitor of magic lived. The second condition was the one that he found quite peculiar. If he lost, he would not harm Ethan Gremory, his family, friends, and acquaintances, whether it be directly or indirectly. Frankly, he thought that this condition was very strange, but since he assumed that it was due to the story he shared with Ethel, he decided to think that the young lady was just trying to be a good Samaritan and protect someone whom she only heard about from his story. "I will now add my own conditions to this contract," Godfrey said. "Will that be okay, my lady?" Ethan replied. "That is only fair, no?" "Right." Godfrey nodded. "If I win, I wish for you to become my woman. You will stay with me for life and become my lover." Godfrey's condition then appeared on contract, making him smile. As for the second condition, the Vampire Lord pondered for a bit before adding what he wanted next. "The second condition is for you to bear my children," Godfrey stated, "and raise them with love and care. That is all." After the second condition appeared on the contract, the Vampire Lord placed a drop of his blood on the scroll, activating his oath. After doing so, the scroll burst into flames, and two flaming orbs flew toward Ethel's and Godfrey's chest, binding their souls to the contract they both agreed on. "I think the second condition is good," Lyle said in a teasing tone as she glanced at Ethel. "Hey, want to give birth to my kids?" Nicole and Hecate also looked amused. Knowing the truth, they truly found Godfrey's last condition quite funny. However, it was really no laughing matter. If Ethan's team lost, the power of the contract really would force him to stay by Godfrey's side despite the fact that he was not a woman. As to how the Vampire Lord would react, knowing that he had been tricked, Nicole and Lyle were very tempted to see it, but only after they won the fight. "Are you sure you want to fight us alone?" Ethel asked. "This is a group battle, you know?" "I don't need small fries to fight alongside me, my lady," Godfrey replied with confidence. "I alone am enough. I will prove to you that I am a very capable man." "Well, if you say so." Ethel nodded before showing the Vampire Lord a gold coin. "How about we start our battle as soon as this coin falls on the ground?" "That's fine by me," Godfrey agreed. "Please toss it, my lady." With a flick of Ethel's thumb, the gold coin spun high in the air. Godfrey stood with his arms crossed over his chest, fully believing that there was no possible way he could lose. This wasn't the first time he had fought alone against many people. In fact, he had destroyed several organizations in the past that had offended him, and he dealt with them on his own. He had fought dozens, and even hundreds of people back then. So, fighting 5 people wasn't really a big deal to him. In fact, he even told the young beauty that she could invite more people to fight alongside her if she wished. But Ethan politely declined his offer because it wouldn't be fair, which made the Vampire Lord laugh internally. I'll let them land a few hits and act as if they have the upper hand, Godfrey thought. It'll be more fun seeing the despair on their face when they realize how strong I really am. The Vampire Lord casually glanced at his surroundings and saw that several people had gathered beside the lakeside to watch the battle. The moment the coin landed on the ground, Nicole, Lyle, and Connell charged forward with the intention to test how strong a demigod was. Hecate stayed beside Ethel and took a fighting stance to unleash her most powerful attack. This special move required a bit of preparation, so she needed to focus all her powers into one decisive blow. Ethan, who had already seen this move, stood beside Hecate. He was holding his wand with his right hand and holding the chain that Professor Barrett gave him with his left. As expected, he is underestimating us, Ethan thought. Good. Stay that way. Your arrogance will be your downfall. Ethan gripped his wand and the chain firmly in his hands as he waited for Hecate to finish charging up her attack. The moment she finished, he would not hesitate to create an opportunity so that they could land the finishing blow on Godfrey's body, allowing him to realize the downside of his arrogance. Lyle had long wanted to test how she would fare against a demigod, so she was feeling very excited as she charged in Godfrey's direction. With a glance, Godfrey could tell that the handsome man in the lead had great combat ability, but he wasn't too worried since he had fought many others with the same level. And frankly, he enjoyed seeing the despair on the faces of these people the moment they realized that, no matter how hard they hit him, their blows would be unable to kill him. He wasn't an immortal, but due to his incredibly fast regeneration, he was the closest being in the world to immortality. With a punch that could shatter a boulder to pieces, Lyle's fist headed straight towards Godfrey's face. Originally, he intended to accept the blows thrown at him, but the Vampire Lord didn't want to let anyone hit his handsome face. Because of this, he raised his hand to block Lyle's fist, catching it firmly with his hand. Instead of being surprised, Lyle's left fist smashed into Godfrey's chest, making the latter take 2 steps back. Connell, who was right behind his sister, grabbed hold of Godfrey's head and smashed it into his knee several times before pushing the Vampire Lord away a bit so that his back kick would connect, which sent Godfrey flying. Nicole, who was waiting for that moment, conjured a giant block of ice and smashed it on Godfrey's body, making the spectators of the battle gasp in shock. They killed Lord Godfrey! Damn, are they serious? Call the guards! A murder has been done! The people who were watching the battle started to stir, with a few of them heading back to the city to report what was happening near the lakeside. But before they could go far, the block of ice that was pinning the body of the Vampire Lord to the ground was tossed toward the lake, making a big splash. Seriously, why do mongrels always target my handsome face? Godfrey stood up as the injuries that Connell and Nicole had dealt him healed at a rapid pace. Are all of you just jealous of my God-given looks? Well, Lyle muttered under her breath. This guy is indeed tough. The people who were watching couldn't believe what they were seeing. They really thought that no one could possibly survive such an attack, yet there the most popular and arguably the most good-looking noble in the city of Cashel stood, casually dusting off his robes. I don't mind getting hit, but stop targeting my face, Godfrey smirked. If you hit my face again, I'm going to get angry. Lyle and Connell exchanged a glance and nodded their heads at the same time. The two of them then charged in the Vampire Lord's direction before transforming into werewolves. The brother and sister pair intended to unleash their full powers against Godfrey and defeat them with their combination attacks. Werewolves? Godfrey frowned. I wouldn't have thought that Lady Ethel would be accompanied by 2 dogs. It seems that I need to properly discipline the 2 of you. Vampires and werewolves didn't get along with each other. With this in mind, Godfrey decided to no longer take their attacks passively, and also took a step forward to clash against his two opponents. I called you mongrels earlier, and it seemed that I was right. Godfrey laughed as he blocked the attacks of the two werewolves at the same time. The three combatants were moving so fast that their clashes looked like an action movie being played in fast forward. To Ethan's surprise, the Vampire Lord was able to hold his ground against Lyle and Connell's combined assault. But he could also tell that Godfrey was unable to push them back either. The Vampire Lord, who originally thought that he could easily overpower his opponents, couldn't help but frown. The werewolves he was currently fighting against were neither stronger, faster, nor deadlier than the ones whom he had fought in the past. However, Lyle's and Connell's teamwork was impeccable, covering each other's weaknesses perfectly. Slowly but surely, they were pushing the Vampire Lord back with each blow that they gave. To make matters worse, Nicole's ice shards and ice spikes were attacking the demigod from the sky and the ground, limiting his maneuverability. The ice spikes that embedded themselves deep into Godfrey's body gave Lyle and Connell many opportunities to land their blows on the vampire noble's face, chest, and other vital locations that would force ordinary people to gasp in pain. It was at that moment that Godfrey understood that his opponents were fighting him with the intent to cripple him. "You bastards!" Godfrey shouted in anger as a powerful aura exploded from his body, pushing Lyle and Connell backwards. "No more Mr. Nice Guy. I'm going to cripple all of you." Godfrey's eyes turned blood red and his fangs extended. Now that he realized he was not in a position to hold back against his opponents, he decided to really go all out and destroy them. Lyle and Connell, who had lost their momentum, once again took a step forward and closed the distance between them and Godfrey in a heartbeat. A moment later, Lyle grunted in pain as she was sent flying with Godfrey's kick aimed at her abdomen. The Vampire Lord then unleashed an explosive punch toward Connell, but the latter managed to dodge to the side and unleash a counterpunch, which landed on the side of Godfrey's body. As someone who had sparred with their father almost every day of his life, Connell wasn't fazed by the strength Godfrey was exuding right now. Sure, he was indeed very strong, but in terms of raw strength, speed, and power, his father Seth was superior to the Vampire Lord in every way. Of course, that didn't mean that Godfrey wasn't strong. Even with his best, Connell was finding it difficult to exchange blows with the Vampire Lord because every blow made him feel as if he was punching a steel plate. Godfrey's blows also connected with the werewolf's body, making Connell take a few steps back whenever they connected. Although he also had a regeneration ability, like most beastkins did, it wasn't as exaggerated as the Vampire Lord's, which could easily heal his moderate injuries in seconds. Shh, Connell cursed internally. With the current situation, he knew that it was only a matter of time before he lost in the contest of strength. If not for Nicole supporting him from the side and unleashing well-timed ice spikes that shot upward from the ground, Connell would have been seriously injured by now. "You annoying pest!" Godfrey made a slashing gesture, and a crimson blade flew toward Nicole's direction, forcing her to jump to her right side and roll over on the ground to evade it. A second later, the ground where she originally stood was cut in half, extending down to a dozen meters deep. Having recovered from the Vampire Lord's kick earlier, Lyle appeared behind Godfrey, intending to execute a sneak attack on him, but the Vampire Lord seemed to have sensed her and unleashed a backhand blow, which once again sent her flying. "I've had enough!" Godfrey blocked Connell's punch and bit into his arm, digging deep into his muscles and drawing blood. The werewolf cried out in pain, but he still managed to kick the Vampire Lord away, freeing himself from his bite. "As expected, the blood of mongrels like you is disgusting," Godfrey sneered before shifting his attention to the young beauty, who was standing dozens of meters away from him and eyeing him with a wary gaze. "You don't seem surprised, my lady," Godfrey said. "Did you already know my nature?" Ethan didn't answer the Vampire Lord's question because he knew that if he did, the other party might raise his guard. Instead, he pointed his wand at Godfrey and cast a spell. "Sing with me," Ethan said. "Illumina." The mermaid princess materialized behind Ethan, which made the Vampire Lord's eyes widen in shock. "You!" Godfrey pointed at the mermaid princess in disbelief. "Why are you here?" But instead of answering his question, Illumina unleashed a concentrated beam of water, one powerful enough to cut a diamond in half in his direction, forcing the Vampire Lord to take evasive actions. Several thoughts swirled inside Godfrey's mind simultaneously, but he prioritized the most pressing concern and temporarily brushed off the rest. Knowing that the attack of the mermaid princess was truly powerful, Godfrey decided to do the only thing he could do: scatter his body into countless fragments by turning himself into countless bats. Illumina's concentrated beam of water harmlessly passed through the screeching bats that flew in different directions, forming a miniature swarm. However, Ethan was not done just yet. Pointing his wand toward the sky, dark clouds gathered and covered the light of the sun. The rumbling of thunder and the powerful gusts of wind heralded the coming of a storm. A storm which Godfrey didn't expect would be summoned. A lightning bolt descended from the sky like a vengeful dragon, turning all the bats it hit into ashes. Several more lightning bolts descended, annihilating the bats without mercy and making the onlookers scatter, like wild ducks hearing the sound of gunshot. They understood that this was no longer an ordinary duel, being gods compared to ants like them. If they were unlucky, they might get hit by a lightning bolt and turn into charcoal. "It seems that I have underestimated you, Lady Ethel." Godfrey's voice, which no longer held a tinge of playfulness, spread in the surroundings. "But you still won't win. I am invincible." The swarm of bats merged together, and the vampire lord appeared, his eyes glowing golden. "You're invincible?" Ethan smirked. "Let's put that to the test." Ethan pointed his wand at Godfrey and summoned dozens of giant water snakes. The vampire lord snorted, swung his hands, creating crimson blades that cut the water snakes in half. However, just as he was about to eliminate the last water snake, his instincts kicked in, and he immediately jumped backward. But he was a little too late in doing so. Illumina's water beam sliced through the vampire lord's right arm, severing it completely. However, a few seconds later, a trail of blood burst forth from the severed arm and connected itself back to Godfrey's body. The vampire lord acted as if nothing happened and even looked at the mermaid princess in disdain. "Sea witch, I never thought I'd see you again in this place," Godfrey disdainfully sneered. "Did you know, Lady Ethel, that mermaid princess is the same person who accompanied Princess Ramona to see the progenitor of magic? I don't know how she became your familiar, but you're better off without her." Knowing that Illumina wouldn't disappear unless he knocked out the young beauty unconscious, Godfrey no longer hesitated and flew in Ethan's direction. "Filthy bat," Illumina sneered. "Not in my watch." Dozens of water orbs circled around Illumina, and with a snap of her fingers, all of them transformed into water beams. They shot toward Godfrey, forcing the demigod to stop his charge and to take evasive actions. Ethan wasn't being idle either. He made a slashing motion with his wand, commanding the lightning bolts to annihilate his foe. Godfrey then summoned two bloody swords in his hands and parried the lightning bolts, making them scatter, resulting in the ground around him being destroyed. Then, with a flexibility that would put any gymnast to shame, the vampire lord bent his body at an unnatural angle, dodging Illumina's water beams that defied human logic. Of course, he was not able to dodge all of the attacks aimed in his direction, but it didn't matter. Even if his body parts exploded, the vampire lord would regenerate the damage in a matter of seconds anyway. Because of this, Ethan noticed a pattern in their opponent's fighting style. Godfrey only blocked or evaded the attacks that targeted his head. Even if his chest were to be blown up, he didn't bat an eye. But whenever one of his or Illumina's spells were to hit his head, Godfrey would immediately take evasive actions to protect it. As if coming to an understanding, Illumina and Ethan focused their target on the vampire lord's face, making Godfrey roar in anger. Lyle and Connell were unable to approach their opponent because it was too risky to do that. If they made a mistake, Ethan's and Illumina's spells might hit them, which would be the worst case scenario. However, Nicole was a different case. The young lady was paying close attention to Godfrey's movements, so every time she saw an opportunity, she would also cast an earth spike to pierce through the vampire lord's body when he least expected it. Godfrey was now regretting the fact that he had underestimated his opponents. He should have been suspicious when he received a letter of challenge from Ethel. The fact that she asked for a group battle instead of a one-on-one was already a giveaway that she would be fighting alongside her entourage. But Godfrey, who had lived several decades without encountering any danger to his life, had lost his edge in battle. Not to mention that he had arrogantly believed that even if he were alone, he would still be able to overwhelm Ethel and her comrades because of his incredibly powerful regeneration ability that could regenerate a severed body part in seconds. He was only able to do that because of his robust life force, which he had gained from drinking the blood of powerful witches. As smart as he was, Godfrey also realized that even if he had brought 4 of his strongest subordinates, the end result would be the same. None of the men under him was a match against the young beauty's comrades, whose fighting abilities were above the normal standards. "You won't defeat me," Godfrey roared, as he decided to stop defending and to focus on attacking. They couldn't kill him anyway, so he would just close the distance and go all out. Although he didn't want to seriously injure Ethel, he had no choice but to do it. Only by defeating her would he be able to get the upper hand in this fight. But when he was only a few meters from the young lady, the servant who had been standing by her side finally made his move. Time seemed to move in slow motion as Godfrey's gaze landed on the young man's glowing right fist, which made his senses scream in alarm. As someone who had lived for hundreds of years, Godfrey trusted his senses more than anything. He understood that the attack that the man was about to lunge at him could potentially threaten him. Knowing that his life may be on the line, a pair of bat-like wings burst forth from the Vampire Lord's back. With a mighty flap of his wings, the Vampire Lord shot toward the sky in an attempt to escape Hecate's ultimate move. But just as he thought that he was about to successfully make an escape, he felt something coil on his right leg, preventing him from flying away. Ethan, who was holding the dimensional chain that Professor Barrett had given him before he left Brynhildr Academy, sneered at the Vampire Lord, who didn't expect this trick he was saving for last. "Damn you!" Godfrey shouted with all his might as he slashed at Hecate using the blood swords in his hands. But 2 ice spikes jutted from the ground and pierced through his arms, preventing him from swinging his swords fully. Voidbreaker. Hecate's words rang inside Godfrey's head before an excruciating pain exploded in his chest. He, who had lived for hundreds of years, had grown too arrogant of his powers. He believed that aside from the progenitors and other demigods, no one was his match. Little did Godfrey know that Ethan and his comrades had traveled thousands of miles in order to defeat him. When he realized his folly, it was already too late. The only thing he could do was scream as Hecate's attack took effect, stopping his precious regeneration ability from healing the damage that would bring him down to his knees. "Do you surrender?" Ethan asked as a luminous water blade raised Godfrey's chin. After Hecate landed her ultimate move, the mermaid princess slapped the Vampire Lord silly, as if venting her anger for being called a sea witch earlier. Now that the demigod's regeneration ability was temporarily ineffective, Ethan no longer used lethal spells to attack him. This was why Illumina had taken the initiative to manually slap the handsome vampire to oblivion until his cheeks became black and blue. I surrender," Godfrey, who no longer had the courage to continue fighting, finally conceded. Ethan felt something warm wash over his body, which was the sign that the contract was now in effect. Since Godfrey had lost the duel, he was now bound by the clause of the contract. From now on, the demigod was forbidden to harm him, his family, his friends, and his acquaintances in any way. Aside from that, the Vampire Lord would also have to accompany him at World's End, so that he could meet the progenitor of magic, Hecate. The dark clouds that covered the sky dispersed completely, making the sunlight shine down upon the world. A few minutes later, the sound of countless hooves reached their ears as Prince Isaac and the knights of the capital city arrived at the scene. Seeing the destruction in the surroundings and the battered face of Lord Godfrey, the third prince of the Milesians looked at Ethan in askance. "Lady Ethel, can you tell me what happened here?" Prince Isaac asked. "Why is Lord Godfrey bruised and beaten?" "I challenged him to a duel," Ethan answered, "and it just ended." "A duel?" Prince Isaac asked. "I thought that demons had started to march toward the city. The sound of explosions had reached all the way to the city gates, scaring the civilians." Ethan bowed and apologized for disrupting the peace of the city. "I apologize for causing the people to panic," Ethan said. "Lord Godfrey is just too powerful that we have no choice but to fight seriously. So far, he is the 6th strongest person I have fought in my life." Godfrey blinked once and twice before glancing at the young beauty who called him the 6th strongest person she had met in her life. He didn't know if he should feel honored that he was acknowledged to be strong or insulted because he was only ranked 6th. What he didn't know was that Ethan's rankings were as follows. 1. Grandma Agnes. 2. Era's Avatar. 3. Professor Barrett. 4. His adoptive father, Wallace, 5. Seth, 6. Godfrey. Prince Isaac, who had always wanted to beat the crap out of the arrogant nobleman hailed as the most handsome man in the capital city, nodded his head in understanding. "Next time, please invite me if you're planning to duel Lord Godfrey," Prince Isaac said. "I will do my best to fight for you, Lady Ethel." "You're too kind, Your Highness," Ethan replied. "But I will keep that in mind." Godfrey scoffed despite the pain he was feeling. He took a mental note to wear a mask and beat the crap out of Prince Isaac tonight to vent his frustration. "Lord Godfrey, thank you for accepting my challenge." Ethan gave the defeated vampire a polite bow. "Please pack up your clothes and prepare to go on a journey. Tomorrow at noon we will set off to the place where you promised to take us." Godfrey sighed before standing up from the ground. "A deal is a deal, so I will honor my part of the agreement," Godfrey said. "You surprise me, Lady Ethel. I'm sure that our trip will be an enjoyable one." Prince Isaac frowned after hearing that the young lady whom he had set his sights on was going to leave the city. He had already made plans to get to know her better, so this sudden revelation made him feel at a loss. To make matters worse, she would be traveling alongside Godfrey, who seemed to be smiling despite the bloody nose on his face. "Lady Ethel and I will go on a trip together," Godfrey said as he walked past the prince, who was mounted on a white horse. "Don't worry, I will buy you a souvenir and tell you all about our intimate moments together." Oh, these words made Prince Isaac grit his teeth in anger. However, there was nothing he could do but accept that the lady he fancied was going to leave with the #1 womanizer of the city of Cashel. "My lady, make sure to not spend any time alone with this rascal," Prince Isaac stated. "Lock the doors of your room. Otherwise, this demon will climb onto your bed and have his way with you." "Well, that's something I look forward to seeing," Lyle said with her arms crossed over her chest. "It will be a very amusing sight to behold." The prince interpreted Lyle's words as, if he has a death wish, that he can try, which made him feel a little better. However, Lyle's meant something else. She was simply looking forward to the time when Godfrey would realize that he was actually courting a man instead of a woman. Just the thought of it was amusing. Since the duel was over, Prince Isaac decided to escort Ethan back to his flying ship, and even stayed for a bit to have some tea with him. Of course, he did his best to dissuade her from leaving the city, but Ethan had already made up his mind, so he apologized to the prince and said that he couldn't stay any longer. "I'm sure that if fate wills it, you will return here in the city of Cashel, my lady," Prince Isaac bowed. "Until then, I will look forward to hearing the tale of your journey. Just remember to always lock the door of your room. Lord Godfrey is not a very trustworthy person." "Thank you, Your Highness," Ethan replied. "I'll keep that in mind." Prince Isaac bid Ethan with a heavy heart and returned to the city with his knights. "You're such a sinful woman, Lady Ethel," Nicole said in a teasing tone. "Maybe we should fix that. What do you say?" Ethan smiled faintly before shaking his head. "The fun and games are now over," Ethan stated. "Tomorrow, we leave for World's End." After saying those words, Ethan returned to his room and waved his wand to undo the effect of the potion. Lady Ethel had already served her purpose, so he would be able to sleep peacefully knowing that he wouldn't have to drink the polygender potion ever again.
Feels like this universe is reality.
After returning to his manor, Godfrey sat on his balcony and contemplated everything that had happened in the past few hours. He had been living his life following the same monotonous routine over and over again, and frankly, this sudden change caught him completely by surprise. "How long has it been since I last left the city?" Godfrey thought as he stared at the sprawling city from his balcony. "A decade or two, perhaps?" He had traveled to a lot of places hundreds of years ago. Back then, his instincts were sharp, and getting even sharper as he continuously experienced life and death battles. Well, technically, although those battles had been difficult, there wasn't really any chance of him dying. Aside from his regeneration ability, his father had given the demigod a special artifact that would immediately teleport him to his son's side, in the case that the latter was about to receive a killing blow or was about to die. Because of this, Godfrey moved unhindered in Midgard, fearlessly facing off against humans, monsters, and other powerful beings that would make any mortal tremble the moment they laid their eyes on them, One of such beings was the progenitor of magic, Hecate. When he saw her, he wasn't only mesmerized by her beauty, but he also felt true death. He knew then and there that he was staring at someone who could really kill him if she wished to do it. So when he left World's End after his long search for the whereabouts of Princess Ramona, he thought that he would never return to such a place again. But it seemed that fate had other plans for him. "Ha, this is quite a dilemma," Godfrey muttered. "Why are all the good women making things difficult for me?" During his long life, he had once thought of finding a few girls to marry and form a family with. Princess Ramona was one of the candidates he had chosen to become his first wife, so he traveled to the Magdar Kingdom only to see her. But her fate left a bitter aftertaste in his mouth. So he tossed the idea of looking for a wife and simply partook in the pleasures of blood and flesh without committing to anything. And now, hundreds of years later, he saw another young lady whom he found an incredible attraction to. It was as if he was a moth being lured to a flame, and because of it, he got burned pretty badly. The pain on his face was slowly getting duller, and he could tell that his regeneration ability was slowly but surely coming back to him. But despite the injuries he received healing, they were healing at a snail's pace, a stark contrast with how it used to be. But this might also be a blessing in disguise, Godfrey mused. Leaving the city and going off on an adventure with a beautiful lady is a good change of pace. Although I don't know why she wanted to see Hecate, I am confident that I can get closer to her during the journey. Of course, there was one more thing that Godfrey was dying to try, and that was to drink Ethel's blood. The fragrance her body exuded was intoxicating, which meant that her bloodline was powerful, incredibly powerful. Oh, how much I would pay for a taste. Godfrey subconsciously licked his lips in anticipation of the opportunity to sink his fangs into the young lady's delicate neck as his hands groped her tender bosom while he made love to her. He was certain that the feeling of conquest would leave him breathless. In the end, Godfrey had decided to make Ethel his, whether through seduction, temptation, or the allure of immortality. The vampire lord's desire to search for a partner was rekindled as the injuries on his handsome face were finally healed. Glancing at the city one last time, Godfrey stood up from his favorite chair and walked back inside his manor. He still had to pack his clothes, bid his acquaintances goodbye, and meet the young beauty in the morning to set off on a journey towards World's End. A brand new adventure awaits, Godfrey thought with a smile. I can't wait. The next day, Godfrey went to see the king of the Milesians to tell him that he would be leaving the city for an indefinite period of time. It had been a tradition among the Milesians to pass any information about Godfrey to the king who would inherit the throne. Simply put, the current king, Eugene Kane Miles, knew that the man standing before him was a vampire lord who had been alive for hundreds of years. In the eyes of the kings of the Milesians, Godfrey was similar to a guardian protector living in their kingdom as a duke who got along well with the royal family. Godfrey had never intervened with court politics and was content in flirting with the women in the capital city of Cashel. The only times when there had been a conflict of interest was when the princes of the kingdom fancied a lady that Godfrey also fancied. This was similar to Prince Isaac's case, where he found Lady Ethel very charming but had to contend with Godfrey for her attention. I heard from my son that you are going to accompany a young lady on her journey, King Eugene said with a smile. Although I haven't seen her personally, she must be an exceptional lady to have both your and Isaac's attention. That she is, but more, Godfrey replied. She is truly a fascinating individual. Since you have already decided to go, feel free to take whatever you need from the warehouse, King Eugene said. Wine and food, as well as anything else you need. It's the least I can do for the past hundreds of years you kept the city safe. The vampire lord smiled faintly because he knew that the king was just teasing him. While he did keep the city safe, there were things that the royal family had decided to turn a blind eye to, including the activities of the Bloodfangs. Still, thanks to Godfrey's influence, the crimes in the city had drastically decreased. But well, that was only because his cult, the Bloodfangs, called the shots and eliminated all other competition. An underground organization that was subservient to him also served their purposes. As long as they followed the rules that he had set, they could do whatever they wanted, including the abduction of ladies whom they believed that their lord would fancy. Be safe, your majesty. Godfrey gave the king a brief nod. And do not trust the Fomorians. Regardless of what promise they make, They are a race that can never be trusted. The king's expression turned solemn after hearing the guardian's advice. Understood. I will keep that in mind, King Yug replied. May you have a safe journey, Lord Godfrey. And may you live long enough to enjoy your life. Godfrey winked before leaving the throne room. As he walked the hallways of the palace, he happened to see Prince Isaac heading to the throne room as well. The two men merely gave the other a sidelong glance before walking past each other. There were no words that needed to be exchanged between them, and Godfrey also didn't plan on talking to the prince. Since he had already done everything he needed to do, he decided even though their meeting time was still a few hours away. He believed that arriving early wouldn't be a problem since being early is still better than being late. When he arrived at the flying ship, he saw the Catkins busying themselves to prepare for departure. Godfrey casually landed on the deck of the ship, making Merrick, who was in charge, glance in his door. Early, Lord Godfrey, Merrick greeted the vampire lord, who would be guiding them to their destination. Don't mind me and carry on. Godfrey, is Lady Ethel around? Yes, Merrick replied. Then can you inform her that I've arrived? Understood. Merrick nodded and headed toward the cabin, where his young master and his friends were having a meeting. A few minutes later, a young lady with long red hair appeared on the deck, which made Godfrey raise an eyebrow. Lyle, who no longer needed to use the potion, walked toward the vampire lord with a mischievous smile on her face. Godfrey subconsciously took a step back. After taking a good look at the dashing beauty in front of him, he knew then and there what she was. Also, he felt like he had seen her before, but no matter how hard he tried to recall, he couldn't quite put his finger on it. In the end, he thought that she might be one of the servants serving Ethel, whom he didn't have the chance to meet in the city. Well, hello there, Mr. Godfrey, Lyle said with a smile. You're rather early. Are you so excited to see our Ethel? Yes, Godfrey replied, as he stared at the young lady, whom he had identified as one of those crazy women that he didn't want to touch even with a 12-foot pole. Where is she? She's inside, Lyle replied. Would you like to see her? I do, Godfrey answered. Then please come with me. Lead the way. The smile on Lyle's face widened because this was the moment that she was waiting for. She was looking forward to the inevitable meeting between Ethan and the vampire lord, who would soon realize that the young lady whom he wanted to seduce to become his lover was actually the young man whom he tried to look for in the past. Lyle was doing her best to stop herself from giggling as they approached the dining area, where Ethan and the others were waiting for them. When they finally arrived, Lyle moved aside and allowed the vampire lord to walk past her. The first person Godfrey saw was a handsome young man with long blue hair, standing with his hands behind his back. He looks just like Ethel, Godfrey thought. He must be her brother. I better make a good impression on my future in-law. Ethan, who had no idea what the vampire lord was thinking, asked Godfrey to take a seat, which the latter happily accepted. As soon as he sat down, a young beauty who had asked him to accompany her to the place where the progenitor of magic was staying. However, the only ones he saw were the two other beautiful ladies standing behind Ethan, eyeing him with solemn expressions on their faces. A glance was enough to tell him that these two ladies were quite powerful. It seems that my future brother-in-law has good taste in women just like me, Godfrey mused. I guess we have something in common. Ethan was quietly observing the demigod in front of him calmly. He knew that the moment Godfrey learned he had been tricked, things would get messy very quickly. But since there was no sugarcoating this sensitive topic, he decided to break the ice and directly tell the vampire lord that the young lady he liked didn't exist. However, before Ethan could take the initiative to start the conversation, Godfrey was the first to speak out. You must be Ethel's brother, Godfrey said with a smile. It is a pleasure to meet you. May I know your name? The young man knew that this question must be answered truthfully, so he gave his answer without batting an eye. Ethan replied. Ethan Gremory. Godfrey, who thought that he was being pranked, laughed out loud. That's a good one, brother, Godfrey said after he finished laughing. No, really. Please tell me your name. Also, where is Ethel? She's supposed to meet me today. You didn't hear wrongly, Godfrey, Ethan stated. My name is Ethan Gremory. Last but not the least, Ethel is not real. The person you are looking for is the one you are staring at right now. You're smart, so you can understand, right? This prank has gone too far, Godfrey replied in a serious tone. This is no longer funny. Of course it's not, Ethan replied. After all, this is reality, and right now you seem to be in denial. Godfrey narrowed his eyes before glancing at the people in the room with him. He had seen Merrick and Connell before. As for the three other ladies who were present, he was sure he had never seen before. But as he extended his senses, he sensed that their life force matched the people whom he had fought during the duel beside the smashed the table in anger with his fist. "You bastard!" Godfrey shouted in anger. "You tricked me!" Ethan smiled faintly, which only made the vampire lord more angry. "Yes, I tricked you," Ethan replied. "But what can you do about it?" Godfrey glared at the young man, who was looking back at him with an amused smile on his face. Time's over, given how severe the vampire lord's handsome face contorted in rage. Looking at the enraged vampire lord, Ethan understood that the other party had every right to be angry at him. In fact, Ethan was surprised when he realized that he didn't feel any hate or anger toward Godfrey. Not even the slightest. When he decided to look for the vampire lord in Midgard to ensure that he would not target Hecate, he found out that the demigod wasn't really an overbearing person. Sure, his subordinates kidnapped beautiful women with powerful bloodlines, but Godfrey never ordered them to do it. They did it on their own in exchange for power. That was the information that Nicole and the others had managed to get from their interrogation. Of course, that didn't mean Godfrey was innocent either. If he wished for it, he could have asked his subordinates to stop doing it, but he didn't, making him an accomplice. To make matters worse, those who received a drop of his blood would indeed gain power, but their lives could end easily with just a thought from him. This was what had happened when Ethan dealt with the cult members that had infiltrated the Shire continent, which made him understand that the vampire lord could be merciless and vicious if he really wanted to be. The cult members who died in the Shire continent were part of the people whom Godfrey had assigned to gather information due to the request of someone named Aaron. The members of the Bloodfangs didn't know who this Aaron was, but it seemed that he and Godfrey knew each other, which was the reason why Godfrey decided to do him a favor. Of course, while they were there, they also searched for any information about the Saintess, but they didn't really know who this Saintess was. The only Saintess whom Ethan knew was Hecate. However, that didn't necessarily mean that she was their target. Bloodfangs could be referring to another person as the Saintess. "Tell me, who is Aaron?" Ethan asked the vampire lord. "Is he a Fomorian?" The vampire lord, who was glaring at the young man, scoffed before crossing his arms over his chest. Clearly he had no intention of telling Ethan anything. "You must be wondering why we came all the way here to do this to you, aren't you?" Ethan said with a smile. "It's partly because of that group you sent in the Shire continent to attack the ravens that belong to our academy. If it weren't for that, we wouldn't have traveled thousands of miles just to find you. If you didn't do that favor for Aaron, you might still be living your everyday life in a carefree manner. But since you decided to make the lives of others difficult, you should have expected to suffer the same, no?" The corner of Godfrey's lips rose slightly as if finding Ethan's words ridiculous, but despite Ethan's probing, his lips remained shut, not saying anything about the person named Aaron. Because of this, Ethan decided to change his tactic. "How does it feel to be defeated by the person whom Princess Ramona loved?" Ethan asked. "You've searched for me, haven't you? Great. I'm here now. So, are you happy to see me? Also, don't tell me you really fell in love with Ethel. Man, if you could have seen the look on your face when you realized that you'd been chasing a man's skirt, it was truly priceless. I should have brought a magic camera and preserved it for eternity." Ethan's words, filled with ridicule and contempt, were like salt being rubbed into Godfrey's wounds. The rage the vampire lord had been holding back once again flared out, making him reach out to the young man so that he could snap his neck. "You bastard!" Godfrey shouted as he lunged forward. However, he had only managed to take a single step when his body froze midair and writhed in pain. Purple flames licked his entire body as if eating him from the inside out, making Godfrey scream. "Stop!" Godfrey shouted. "Stop it!" But no matter how much he begged, the flames continued to burn him for a minute before disappearing completely. White smoke rose from the vampire lord's body as he knelt on the ground panting for breath. The contract Ethan's other half had given Ethan was made by Ashmedai himself, so it was truly a binding contract that was backed by the power of a progenitor. Even if Godfrey used all of his power, He wasn't strong enough to break free from its hold. Of all the flavors in the world, you chose to be salty, Lyle commented from the side. But I do like seeing handsome men writhe in pain from time to time. Go on, do it again. Shut up, you BT teach, Godfrey replied with great difficulty. So who is this Iran? Nicole inquired. If not for him, you wouldn't be suffering right now. Don't worry. Just tell me who and where he is. We're planning to make him suffer as much as you are now. Don't you want to see that happen? The vampire lord laughed bitterly after hearing Nicole's words. The ignorant are truly fearless, Godfrey stated. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. You want to know who Aaron is? Fine. I'll tell you who Aaron is. He is the king of the otherworld realm of Anan, a kingdom that can be found on the borders between life and death. Long is the day and long is the night and long is the waiting of Aaron. He is the war god of revenge and terror, and even the Fomorians dare not to mess with him. That's the person who you are referring to. Ethan frowned. He already had a feeling that Aaron wouldn't be someone simple, but his identity as the king of another realm that bordered life and death was beyond his expectations. Without a doubt, the one they were dealing with was a very formidable enemy. I'll have to consult with the headmaster and see what our next move will be, Ethan thought. I must let him know this information first. The young man then crossed his arms over his chest before glancing at the vampire lord, who had once again managed to stand. I'll deal with Aaron at a later time, Ethan said firmly. For now, lead us to World's End. I want to see the progenitor of magic. Good, Godfrey replied with a sneer. I'll take you there. After careful consideration, the vampire lord decided to take Ethan to see the progenitor of magic and have Hecate kill him. That way, he would feel a bit better after all the humiliation that he had been through. Even now, he still couldn't believe that the young beauty whom he was planning to seduce was actually a man. This infuriated him more than his defeat in their duel. Since that was the case, he wanted nothing more than for Ethan to die. Even if he couldn't kill him due to the binding of the contract, he could just take him to the most dangerous places on their way to World's End and hope that the monsters who lived in those domains would end the lives of the young man and his hateful companions. Once and for all.
Come on.
So what do you think? Ashmedai asked the vampire progenitor, who was eyeing his son with a calm expression on his face. My son has gotten rusty after living a long life of degeneracy, Vlad replied. I hope this wake-up call is enough to make him understand that the world is now a different place compared to how it was 100 years ago. Just as Ashmedai was about to say more, something caught his attention. Vlad, who was sitting beside him, also sensed something, making him frown. Those reckless fools. Ashmedai placed his wine on top of the table before standing up. I thought that they were too lazy to care, but it seems that I have underestimated their stupidity. Eris seems to be more important to them than you initially expected, Vlad commented before standing up as well. It seems that this war is being pushed up faster than we expected. We still need more time on our side, Ashmedai said before taking a sidelong glance at the projection showing Ethan and Godfrey. Then, we'll buy them the time they need, Vlad said as his eyes turned golden. I've been getting rusty like my son. A little bit of exercise will help. You call a precursor to an all-out war with progenitors a warm-up exercise? Ashmedai chuckled. Well then, let's not keep them waiting. Vlad nodded. A moment later, the two progenitors disappeared from Ashmedai's domain and reappeared at their home base in the lands of Sarakael. When they appeared, they saw a few progenitors as well as other lesser deities, who were also there to hold the front lines of their domain. Ashmedai and Vlad scanned the familiar faces before approaching their closest friends. They were none other than the King of Fairies, Oberon, and his Queen Titania. How long do you think the barrier will hold? Ashmedai asked Oberon, the one responsible for keeping the barrier active. Half an hour, Oberon answered. Well, I don't mind if they break it now. I'm itching for a fight. Are you really a fairy? Ashmedai smirked. Why are you so bloodthirsty? For a second I thought you were the Imp King, not the Fairy King. Ha ha ha, very funny, Oberon scoffed. Can't you make yourself useful like Manzat? That guy is busy making rainbows appear outside of the barrier and angering these pesky vermin from the other planes. Sorry, but I don't do rainbows, Ashmedai replied. But don't worry, I'll roast them with my purple flames later. It's colorful enough. You know how it works, right? Ashmedai then glanced at the champions who were going to fight alongside them in this battle. Standing at the very front was none other than Ethan's grandfather, Balthazar Azael Valentin. By his side were his sons Lou and Vincent. Behind them were their wives Catherine and Cleodina. Several other champions were also present, and they were Midgard's last line of defense against those who wished to invade their world. Suddenly, a cracking sound reverberated in the sky. Cracks had started to appear in the barrier, prompting everyone to take out their weapons in preparation for battle. Anyone wish to have a bet on who will be the MVP of this battle? Ashmedai asked. You're on. Oberon smirked. What is there to bet? Vlad shook his head helplessly. Obviously I'll win. No, you won't. Not happening. Vlad, just watch from the side. You're too old for this. The other progenitors teased the vampire lord, but the latter only smirked at them. Finally, the crack widened until the barrier shattered into countless pieces. The moment the barrier was destroyed, the progenitors took off to the skies and clashed with the other progenitors. Their champions, on the other hand, clashed with the armies of the dimensional invaders. A bloodbath ensued not long after, dyeing the lands of Sarakael in the colors of war, chaos, and mayhem. Far away from this chaotic battle, the flying ship boarded by Ethan and the other members of his party finally took flight. Their destination was the northwest of the lands of Milesians, which was known as the Red Wastes. It was a desert with sand as red as blood spreading for miles on end. Ethan and his comrades understood that although Godfrey would guide them to World's End, that didn't mean that he wouldn't purposely make their travel difficult. They could already tell that the Vampire Lord was up to something bad, but since they couldn't confirm it, they had no choice but to follow the route that he had written down to reach their destination. Young master, your grandfather once told my father that the Red Waste is home to Chudo Yudo. It is a multi-headed dragon with 3 heads and 3 pairs of wings. If I remember correctly, this monster is around 100 meters tall. Merrick didn't bother to lower his voice, allowing everyone to hear it. Godfrey smirked after hearing Merrick's explanation, not agreeing or denying the validity of the information that Ethan's retainer had shared. How long till we arrive at the Red Wastes? Ethan inquired. If we increase our speed a bit, we will arrive within a day, Merrick answered. If we retain our current speed, a day and a half. Ethan pondered before giving the Catkin the order to increase the speed of their flying ship. He didn't know why, but he suddenly had a bad premonition. He couldn't tell if this feeling was due to the dangers of the Red Wastes, or if it was something else entirely. I might just be overthinking things, Ethan thought before going back to the cabin to meditate and calm down his mind. Godfrey watched the young man leave while cursing him under his breath. However, he almost cursed out loud when Lyle suddenly appeared beside him with a mischievous smile on his face. Damn it, woman. Godfrey glared. What do you want this time? Why are you reacting like this? Lyle arched an eyebrow. Are you suddenly allergic to women or something? I'm not allergic to women. I'm only allergic to you. Godfrey cursed internally, because he would rather have a nice chat with Ethan than talk to Lyle, who was making him feel uneasy. Hey, did you pick a dangerous place to go? Lyle asked, not caring about Godfrey's annoyance. Is the monster we're going to meet strong? How strong is it? Is it stronger than you? Faced with these questions, Godfrey decided to return to his room and lock the door firmly. He was starting to think that bringing Ethan and his comrades to their destination faster was a better option than taking a few detours. Because the longer he delayed, the longer he would have to deal with the crazy girl who was harassing him every time they saw each other. So it's a literal red desert, Ethan muttered as he looked at the sprawling desert in front of him. The moment their flying ship entered its borders, it lost its ability to fly high in the sky and slowly lost altitude. Having already experienced a similar situation when they faced off against the Harpies in the sea, no one in the flying ship panicked. Although their airship couldn't fly high in the sky, it could still hover 3 meters over the red sand. However, their speed had also decreased by half. No matter how Merrick and the others tried to increase the pace of the flying ship, nothing worked. But they also understood that this might be a restriction placed over the domain, so they soon stopped worrying about it and focused on flying in the northeast direction. However, after an hour of traveling in the desert, Ethan asked Merrick to stop the flying ship for a while. because he wanted to test something out. As soon as the ship stopped moving, Ethan jumped off on the ship and landed on the red sand. He then picked up a handful of it and slightly pulled his fingers apart, letting the wind blow it away. The sand was like fine red powder, making the young man wonder if he really was holding sand. There are faint traces of magic in the sand, Ethan's other half commented. It is highly possible that there is a powerful magical core somewhere in this area that converted this entire place into a red desert. Also, if the sand has traces of magic, then the creatures living here are definitely powerful, Sebastian said. Only strong monsters can thrive in this kind of environment. You should be careful, Ethan. That Chudo might be an extremely powerful monster. Ethan nodded in understanding before walking a few steps over the sand. Just as he expected, it required a lot of effort to walk over the sand. Also, since the sand continuously shifted under his feet, it might get tricky during a fight. After a few minutes of observation, Ethan returned to the ship and asked Merrick to continue their journey. Godfrey looked at the young man calmly, but deep inside, he was looking forward to how Ethan and his comrades would deal with the ancient monster that was hiding somewhere in the desert. The vampire lord knew that the moment the flying ship had entered the red wastes, the horrifying multi-headed dragon, Chudo, had already detected their presence. It's only a matter of time before all of you become dragon's poop? Godfrey laughed internally. This is what you get for messing with me. Godfrey couldn't harm Ethan and his friend directly or indirectly, but the journey towards World's End was filled with dangers. No matter what route they took, it would be very dangerous. However, the Red Waste was the most dangerous of them all. Since he was only carrying out the part of the agreement of taking Ethan to World's End, the contract didn't punish him for picking such a dangerous route. It was a loophole that the vampire lord was very keen on exploiting. But as he was anticipating the deaths of the people around him, a teasing voice spoke from behind him, almost making him jump out in fright. You must be looking forward to our deaths, huh? Godfrey took a few steps back before turning around to see Lyle standing a few meters away from him. You shouldn't voice your thoughts out loud, you know, Lyle said with a smirk. You want us to die that much, huh? You must have been humiliated after getting your bottom handed to you. For a brief moment, the vampire lord thought that he had really spoken his thoughts out loud. But after careful consideration, he believed that he wasn't stupid enough to do such a thing. However, even if he didn't say anything, the expression on his face was enough to tell Lyle the truth. I can read minds, you know? Lyle walked toward the vampire lord, her smile widening. You can? Godfrey asked. Yes, Lyle replied with a smile. I can. Ethan and Lyle's brother Connell did their best to keep their expressions from breaking as they listened to the young lady's bullshit. Of course, Lyle actually couldn't read people's minds, but that didn't mean that she was unable to discern what the vampire lord was thinking. Because of this, it was very easy to bluff and make Godfrey wary of her. So make sure to tone it down a bit, okay? Lyle said. It's a bit annoying when you look at me and think that I'm a very hot and sexy lady. You almost had me back there, Godfrey commented, but now I know you're just bluffing. The vampire lord fixed his clothes before glancing at the east. Just now, he sensed a fluctuation in the distance and knew that Chudo was on its way to meet them. Ethan, who also sensed the approaching danger, summoned his sea god's trident. Everyone, get ready, Ethan ordered. Something is coming. Everyone on the ship immediately took battle stations as the Catkins aimed their magical cannons in the direction where Ethan was pointing at. The flying ship only had 2 magical cannons because it was not really a battleship. The cannons were just an added bonus when the Catkins purchased the ship. Ethan glanced over the horizon and saw a small black dot that was slowly getting bigger and bigger with each passing second. Let's intercept it, Ethan shouted as he summoned his wind dancer. Merrick, don't let the flying ship anywhere near it. A moment later, the blue-haired young man was hovering a few meters above the sand and charging straight toward the 3-headed dragon, which was over 100 meters long. Nicole and Hecate summoned their flying brooms and followed behind Ethan. Lyle and Connell, on the other hand, jumped off the ship and started to run on the sand. Their pace was slower compared to Ethan and the others due to how difficult it was to run on the sand. Godfrey watched them go before casually opening a bottle of wine, which he poured into the glass that he had prepared for this occasion. Don't die too fast, okay? Godfrey said as he swirled the wine in his glass. This better be good. Merrick and the other Catkins wanted to fight alongside their master, But they also understood why Ethan ordered them to not come near the dragon. If their ship was destroyed, their journey would be a lot harder. In the end, they had no choice but to watch as their young master and his friends fought against the giant dragon, who had ruled over the Red Wastes for hundreds of years. Ethan had faced a dragon in the past, but this was his first time facing a dragon like Chudo Yudo. He could feel the sheer evil emanating from its body, which was enough to paralyze weak-willed individuals the moment its gaze landed on their bodies. The dragon fear, a trademark inherent ability of powerful dragons, didn't only intimidate its foes, but also made them unable to mount any form of resistance when it came to fighting against it. Fortunately, the comrades who were fighting alongside the young man were not ordinary individuals. They were the cream of the crop, so the dragon's powerful aura didn't hinder their determination to defeat it. Aqua Anguis! Ethan shouted as he pointed his sea god's trident at the dragon. 3 giant water snakes that were as big as trains rose up to tackle the 3-headed dragon. However, the middle head of Chudo Yudo unleashed a fire breath that instantly dispersed Ethan's spell in seconds. The young man hurriedly moved his wind dancer to the right in order to evade the flaming breath that still hadn't lost its momentum. Although Ethan had successfully evaded the attack, the breath attack landed on the red sand, turning it into a blazing molten inferno. The temperature within the vicinity immediately rose up, making everyone understand that this opponent wasn't anything like they had faced in the past. Nicole, who had summoned Snowflake and was riding on her back, tried to attack the 3-headed dragon from the back, aiming for its blind spot. But that was a mistake. Chudo Yudo almost had no blind spots. Not only did it have 3 heads, but each of them could also rotate 360 degrees, allowing it to attack in any direction. The leftmost head unleashed a breath attack made of miasma, which forced Snowflake to dodge to the side. Connell, who managed to get under the dragon, was about to unleash an attack from below, but something unexpected happened. The dragon lowered its body in an attempt to body slam the werewolf underneath it with the intention of turning Connell into a meat paste. Since it was happening so fast, the werewolf had no time to dodge, and the only thing he could do was continue his attack as a last resort. Suddenly, a silver chain coiled on Connell's right leg, pulling him away from the dragon, whose body slammed on the sand, causing a wave of sand to expand outward. "This dragon sure knows how to fight," Lyle said as she caught her brother in midair. "We need to be careful while fighting it in close combat." "Right?" Connell replied, before glancing at the young man who had summoned his other flaming spear, Ariad Bayer. "Thanks, Ethan. You're welcome," Ethan shouted back as he hurled Ariad Bayer towards one of the draconic heads. The dragon didn't bat an eye and slapped the trident away with its claws, creating a spark at the point of impact. "It has high physical and magical resistance," Hecate commented. "It surely is a very difficult opponent, so we mustn't be careless." Ariad Bayer was one of Ethan's most powerful trump cards, and seeing it easily be repelled by the dragon like it was swatting away a fly made Ethan understand why Godfrey decided to come to this location. "That vampire must have fought this dragon in the past and lost miserably against it," Ethan's other half commented. "Now I understand why he believes that you guys can't handle it." Cheeky bastard," Sebastian smirked. "But I doubt it will survive if Ethan uses his celestial domain." "Right." Ethan's other half nodded his head in agreement. If Ethan used his celestial domain, Sebastian and his other half could manifest and help him to battle. However, the young man didn't plan on using it anytime soon. The reason for it was simple. He was saving the celestial domain for the progenitor of magic, just in case the two of them ended up fighting against each other. If he used the celestial domain now, Sebastian and his other half might not be able to manifest themselves during his battle with the progenitor, which would put Ethan at a great disadvantage. "The Tidebringer's domain might not be effective against this monster," Sebastian commented. "Since it can fly, the sea will not pose any problems. Also, it can fly higher than the clouds in the sky, so the lightning will also not have any effect on it." As Ethan was strategizing with Sebastian and his other half, Nicole and Snowflake once again tried to unleash a breath attack from behind to distract the 3-headed dragon. Of course, one of the 3 heads faced the ice dragon and was about to initiate another breath attack, but something unexpected happened. When the dragon was about to unleash its acid breath attack, Dainsleif used his gravity magic and forcefully made the dragon lower its head. Because of this, it ended up unleashing its breath attack on its own back, making it scream in pain as it hurt itself. Nice. Sebastian gave Dane's life a thumbs up. That's my boy Danny. I have raised that kid since he was young, Ethan's other half said. He's a grown boy now. Ethan wanted to laugh out loud because he didn't expect something like this to be possible. Snowflake's ice breath attack hit the middle head, but it wasn't strong enough to freeze it completely. With a few shakes of its head, the ice broke apart and shattered into countless pieces. Seeing an opportunity, Ethan summoned giant water snakes to attack the three-headed dragon, who had momentarily lost its composure. The water snakes coiled themselves on the middle head and sank their fangs into its neck. However, the dragon scales protecting its body were tough, preventing the water snakes from dealing it any serious injuries. The only thing Ethan's water snakes did was annoy it even further. While the dragon was distracted, the young man noticed Hecate charging below the three-headed dragon, making his heart skip a beat. "Don't!" Ethan shouted. "Come back!" Hecate. Earlier, Connell had tried to attack Chudo-Yudo from under its body, and he almost got turned into meat paste. So seeing Hecate doing the exact same thing made Ethan panic. Although the three-headed dragon was momentarily distracted, it didn't mean that it wasn't paying attention to its enemies. With 3 heads, it was impossible not to notice a puny human's attempt to attack it from below. Because of this, it once again lowered its body to the ground. This time, it increased its speed so that the insect would not be able to get away just like last time. Just as everyone thought that Hecate would be crushed under the dragon's weight, a giant made up of rocks rose up and collided with the dragon's body. Hecate had used her magic, which summoned an ancient earth elemental. Originally, the earth elemental was going to attack its summoner, but it found itself in an unusual situation, where its body was being body slammed by a dragon. The dragon's weight crushed the ancient earth elemental, pinning it on the sand. A second later, another elemental appeared, and this time, it was an elder fire elemental. Seeing that one of its brethren was being crushed by the three-headed dragon, it ignored Hecate for the time being and punched one of Chudo-Yudo's heads, making the dragon scream in anger. But that was the least of the three-headed dragon's worries. 2 more elementals emerged, and this time they were an elder water and elder wind elemental. Just like the fire elemental, they decided to ignore their summoner and team up against the dragon, who suddenly found itself being attacked by giant elementals from all directions. Godfrey was expecting to watch an entertaining show. An entertaining show about the death of Ethan Gremery and his band of annoying bastards. Although he found it a bit regrettable that the 2 beautiful ladies, Nicole and Hecate, would die as well, there was nothing he could do about it. Since they were part of the contract he had with Ethan, even in his death, he couldn't touch or hurt them. As for that annoying girl Lyle, the Vampire Lord had no love for her. In fact, he wished that she would die the most gruesome and painful death of all. For him, crazy people were like cockroaches. Some of them wouldn't die even after they were killed. At first, things were turning out the way Godfrey imagined them to. Ethan and his comrades' attempts to harm the three-headed dragon, who was both resistant to magical and physical attacks, didn't bear fruit. However, as the battle continued, they started to employ a different tactic, including summoning an ancient Wendigo. This ancient Wendigo seemed to possess a unique ability which forced Chudo-Yudo's head, as it was about to use its acid breath attack, down so it hit its own back, making it scream in pain, but it didn't end there. He noticed that the Saintess of the Order of the Tidebringer, who shared the name of the progenitor of magic, was rushing toward the three-headed dragon. Such a shame, Godfrey thought in dismay. If only she wasn't following Ethan, I might have taken her under my wing. As he was about to make a toast to honor the young lady's impending death, something he didn't expect happened. When the three-headed dragon was about to crush Hecate with its body, something enormous materialized under its body. An ancient earth elemental suddenly appeared out of nowhere and became the victim of Chudo-Yudo's attack. However, it didn't end there. More elementals, although weaker, appeared out of nowhere and surrounded the three-headed dragon, attacking it with fury. An elder water elemental, an elder wind elemental, and an elder fire elemental unleashed their wrath on the Lord of the Red Wastes, taking it by surprise. The ancient earth elemental, which had been pinned to the ground by the dragon, also stirred and grabbed hold of its enemy's body, preventing it from taking off to the skies. Besieged from all sides, the 3 heads of the dragon tried to fight one opponent each, but the elder elementals were too much for it to handle all at once. The water elemental slapped the middle head of the dragon with a water whip, while the fire elemental unleashed a flamethrower at point-blank range at the rightmost head, while the wind elemental summoned a wind blade and hacked at the leftmost head with the intention of chopping it off from the dragon's body. Sparks flew as the blade collided with the dragon's neck, drawing blood. The cut wasn't deep enough, but it was more than enough for Chudo-Yudo to feel pain. But just as the three-headed dragon thought that things couldn't possibly get any worse, another elemental appeared. This time, it was an Elder Light elemental, whose entire body glowed in a silvery light. It raised its two hands and unleashed two rays of light aimed at the dragon, which broke the balance of the battle and tilted it in the elemental's favor. Hecate then made a hasty retreat to Ethan's side, looking extremely pale. It seemed that summoning a bunch of elementals took a toll on her. Ethan hurriedly came to her side and asked her to ride on his wind dancer where she could rest. "Drink this potion," Ethan said as he handed a rejuvenation potion to Hecate. Hecate drank the potion without a second thought before wrapping her arms around Ethan's body, so that she wouldn't fall off from the wind dancer. "That was very reckless, Hecate," Ethan said as he left the immediate battlefield, where the five elementals were ganging up on the three-headed dragon like a bunch of thugs beating up a random person they found on the streets. "I know," Hecate replied, "but it worked, right?" "It did." Although her face was still pale, she was still able to laugh because her plan worked. Whenever she used any other spell, aside from spells that could directly strengthen her magic, a random elemental of different rank would appear. It ranged from a normal elemental, greater elemental, elder elemental, ancient elemental, and primordial elemental. Hecate was hoping that a primordial elemental would appear since they were the strongest elementals in existence. Although that didn't happen, seeing that she managed to summon an ancient earth elemental, she was already satisfied with the results. With the giant golem made of rocks holding onto the dragon's body, Chudo-Yudo couldn't fly away, allowing the four other elder elementals to attack the dragon without any worry. Nicole, Snowflake, Lyle, and Connell understood that if they were to intervene in the battle, the elementals might shift their attention to them. This was something they didn't want to happen, so they retreated and regrouped with Ethan and Hecate, watching the battle from a safe distance. "How long will the elementals remain?" Ethan asked. "Half an hour at the longest," Hecate replied. 20 minutes at the shortest." "That's enough time to rough that dragon up," Nicole commented. "No matter how resistant it is to magic, the power of elementals cannot be ignored." Everyone nodded in agreement and could only look at Chudo-Yudo's sorry state. But there was one more creature who decided to continue fighting alongside the elementals, and it was none other than Dainsleif. Since it was invisible, it didn't hold back and used gravity magic to prevent the heads of the dragon from mounting a counterattack by forcibly lowering its heads at the right moment. This left Chudo-Yudo helpless against the bombardment of elemental attacks that were raining down on its body. 30 minutes later, all the elementals vanished one by one, leaving behind a beaten-up dragon who could no longer move its body. Godfrey chuckled dryly at the unexpected outcome of the battle. He had been so certain that Ethan and his comrades would die gruesome deaths while facing the dragon. But reality was different. The powerful Lord of the Red Wastes was lying helplessly on the sand without even the strength to lift any of its heads. The most it could do was pant heavily for breath, trying to recover as much as possible. "What are we going to do?" Nicole asked. "Are we just going to leave it? It might bear a grudge against us and hunt us down at a later time." "Let's just kill it," Lyle replied. "Can't Dainsleif absorb its body? He can do that, right?" "Sadly, he can't," Ethan answered. "He's too big and too powerful for him to absorb." Dainsleif regretfully informed him a little while ago that absorbing Chudo-Yudo was impossible. Clearly, the ancient Wendigo had already considered feasting on its body, but it was simply not meant to be. "Then what do we do?" Connell asked. "I don't really like the idea of having a monster like this bearing a grudge against us. Even my father would have a hard time dealing with this thing, so I propose that we kill it while it's still weak." Everyone, with the exception of Ethan, nodded in agreement. But before they could enact their plan on killing the three-headed dragon, Ethan spoke up first. "Let me try something first," Ethan said before flying towards the dragon, who was lying helplessly on the sand. Hecate, who was still riding on the Wind Dancer, was very curious about what Ethan was planning to do. When they were right above the dragon's body, a golden egg suddenly appeared in Ethan's hand. Before Ethan could even place it on top of the dragon's body, the egg took the initiative to jump off of his palm and landed on Chudo Yudo's back. A moment later, it greedily absorbed the three-headed dragon's magical power and life force, making its giant body start to squirm.
Where is that egg?
It was as if Chudo Yudo was doing its best to gather all the strength on its body in order to escape the golden egg, which made it feel threatened. However, as if knowing the dragon's intention, the golden egg only increased its absorption speed, rendering the lord who ruled the Red Wastes helpless. What is that golden egg? Hecate asked in awe. I've never seen something like it before. It's one greedy little guy, Ethan replied. The only thing it knows how to do is absorb magic and life force. Maybe a pig will be born from it once the egg hatches. Suddenly, a voice of a young child that was hard to discern if it belonged to a boy or a girl sounded in Ethan's ears. You're the pig? For a brief moment, Ethan thought that Hecate was the one who spoke. But after glancing at the young lady, she firmly shook her head, telling him that it wasn't her who spoke just now. Don't tell me, Ethan muttered as he looked at the golden egg, who seemed very happy as it absorbed the three-headed dragon's vitality. He had been feeding it with his magical powers from time to time, but since the egg knew that Ethan had limited powers, it would stop whenever the young man's magic reserves were halfway depleted. Now that it had an abundant supply of magical powers and life force, it ate to its fill, making the desperate dragon use telepathy to talk to Ethan. Make him stop, Chudo Yudo begged. I'm going to die at this rate. That's the plan, Ethan replied. No, I can't die, Chudo Yudo shouted. This world needs me when the sky falls apart. What are you talking about? Ethan inquired. You're just spouting nonsense because you're about to kick the bucket. I, ignorant mortal, Chudo Yudo shouted in anger. You don't know what you're doing. We're already stretched thin as it is, and you want to eliminate one of the guardians of this world? Guardian? Ethan frowned. What nonsense are you talking about? If you don't explain properly, I will let this piglet egg drain you until you croak. You're the piglet, the golden egg protested. However, compared to earlier, it lessened the speed of absorption, allowing the three-headed dragon to talk properly. The end of days is approaching, Chudo Yudo stated. Even now, the fabric that protects this world from other planes of existence is stretched thin. Do you not hear it? Do you not feel it? The land of Sarakel is trembling as we speak. At the mention of the lands of Sarakel, Ethan's frown deepened. He only knew of it as the battleground where various worlds and planes of existence merged together to form a vast space where everyone competed for territories. His grandfather was one of the vanguards that protected Midgard from these otherworldly threats. So anything related to it was something that Ethan took seriously. So you're saying that something is happening in the lands of Sarakel? Ethan asked. Yes, Chudo Yudo replied. The start of a great war that hadn't been seen in the past hundreds of years. The possibility of existences from other worlds and entering our world is high. This is why the Guardians, including me, must protect our domains to prevent any of these monsters from invading our world. He might be telling the truth, Ethan's other half commented. I don't hear any lies in his words. Also, I've been unable to contact Ashmedai since a while ago. It seems that he is busy with something. Hearing his other half's words, Ethan pondered a bit before coming up with an idea. I still can't trust your words, but I'll give you a chance, Ethan replied. Form a master and subordinate contract with me. As long as you agree, I will let you live. You dare? Chudo Yudo growled in anger. Don't worry, I promise not to force you to do anything that you don't want to do, Ethan said. I'm only doing this to ensure that you won't seek revenge against us. Can't you just take my word for it? Chudo Yudo was unwilling to become the subordinate of anyone. Like I said, I am protecting this place for a reason. Do you think I was born yesterday? Ethan sneered. Either you agree, or this egg will drain you dry. There will be no compromise. The golden egg shone brightly and started to increase its speed of absorption. It was as if it was giving the three-headed dragon an ultimatum. Agree or I eat you up. Faced with such a difficult decision, Chudo Yudo reluctantly agreed to become Ethan's subordinate. Only when the contract was established did the golden egg return to Ethan's hand, shining with extreme satisfaction after eating its meal. After fighting Chudo Yudo, the three-headed dragon begged Ethan to stay in the Red Wastes for 3 days to allow him to fully recover. In his weakened state, it was possible for creatures to enter his domain and devour him, while he was defenseless. Since he was now more or less Ethan's subordinate, the young man agreed with one condition. Chudo Yudo would tell him everything he knew about the lands of Sarakael and the names of the other guardians that he was close to. The dragon agreed and shared everything he knew about the lands where many worlds intersected. Even Godfrey, who knew about the lands of Sarakael where his father currently resided, was listening to the dragon's story with great interest. When it came to age, Chudo Yudo was older than the Vampire Lord, so there were things that dragons knew that he didn't. Oh, so you know Queen Celestia. That is a name I haven't heard in a long time, Chudo Yudo said. Well, she is a kind fairy until things happened making her want to drown an entire continent and bury it into the sea. Then do you know the progenitor of magic? Ethan asked. You should know her, right? Are you talking about Hecate? Chudo Yudo shuddered. I met her once, and frankly, I don't want to meet her again. If not for the fact that I have a role to play in the bigger picture, she might have turned me into a stone statue and used me as furniture in her domain or something. What is she like? Ethan inquired. Can you tell me more about her? She is the epitome of curiosity, Chudo Yudo answered. She lives and breathes magic, so she's always creating miracles wherever she goes. All of those are born from her experiments. When I say experiments, it means that she will not hesitate to use anything to serve as her experimental subject. If I remember correctly, she is searching for ways to extend the lives of ordinary mortals. Her first lover was an elf, so she became obsessed with finding ways to extend his lifespan. At most, elves can live up to 1,000 years. 1,000 years is long for a mortal. But for progenitors who are nearly immortal, 1,000 years isn't enough. Sadly, she didn't find it before her lover died, but that didn't stop her from trying. I don't know if she succeeded or not since I haven't heard anything from her for the past hundreds of years. Ethan asked a few more questions and Chudo Yudo answered them to the best of his abilities. What can you say about the progenitor, Ashemdai? Ethan asked. I don't want to talk about that pervert. Chudo Yudo grimaced. That bastard does whatever he wants. The other progenitors turn a blind eye to his perverseness because he is one of the strongest defenders of our realm. If I were you, I'd not touch Ashmedai with a 100-foot pole. Sebastian chuckled, while Ethan's other half smiled faintly. Chudo Yudo was like an auntie who loved to share gossip, and they were enjoying his way of talking. By the way, where are you guys headed? Chudo Yudo asked. The Red Waste isn't really a route that most people travel to, because I guard this place. We're going to World's End, Ethan answered. A World's End? Chudo Yudo looked at Ethan in disbelief. Don't tell me you're going to where the progenitor of magic lives. That's right. Are you out of your mind? The three-headed dragon had just said that, if not for his duty as a guardian, the progenitor of magic might have turned him to stone. So he tried to dissuade the young man from meeting Hecate. You should turn back, Chudo Yudo said in a serious tone. Progenitors are not beings that ordinary mortals should casually seek out. Unless you are willing to die, meeting them should not be taken lightly. I need to meet her, Ethan stated. It is very important to me. The three-headed dragon eyed the young man and saw that he was truly determined to do what he said. I'm not going to stop you if that's what you really want, but a word of advice, Chudo Yudo said. Hecate hates liars. So, even if things are detrimental to you, never lie to her. As long as you do that, you might be able to walk away safely from your encounter with her. Ethan nodded. Thank you. I'll keep those words to mind. 3 days later, the young man bid goodbye to the Lord of the Red Wastes and continued his journey. If you know of some other powerful monsters along the way, feel free to point us in their direction, Ethan said to Godfrey. The Vampire Lord rolled his eyes at the young man and decided to just choose the shortest route towards World's End. However, along that route, they would encounter a being that was just slightly weaker than Chudo Yudo. Regardless of what route they took, they would be forced to face this creature because it was the Guardian that watched over the entrance to the underground pathways that led to World's End. 5 days later, they arrived at their destination and came face to face with a noble creature that Ethan was seeing for the very first time in his life. It was the King of Birds, and its fiery personality greeted them the moment they arrived in its territory. The flying ship stopped its flight and gently descended on the ground because Shudo Yudo warned them that there was another guardian that they would meet along the way. And she hated trespassers, just as much as the three-headed dragon did. A phoenix, Nicole said in wonder. It's as beautiful as I imagined. Everyone agreed with her words because the phoenix was truly beautiful. However, this beautiful bird, who was at least 10 meters tall, was eyeing them with a fiery gaze. I'll talk to it first, Ethan said as he summoned his wind dancer. All of you stay here. The young man then flew towards one of the guardians of the world, whose body suddenly ignited with blazing flames. I come in peace, guardian of the skies, Ethan said. We didn't come here to fight. Then what did you come here for? The phoenix asked, its tone as fiery as its appearance. I came here to go to World's End where the progenitor of magic, Hecate, lives, Ethan answered. Hecate? The phoenix narrowed its eyes. What do you need from my master? Your master? Ethan frowned. Hecate is your master? Don't make me repeat myself, the phoenix stated. Why do you want to meet my master? Ethan then explained his reason for coming, which made the phoenix look in the direction of the flying ship. Even from a distance, it could see everyone on the ship clearly. After glancing at the people on the ship, its gaze lingered a few seconds longer on Godfrey before shifting its attention to Hecate. I see. So it's her, the phoenix muttered. A minute of silence passed before the phoenix glanced at Ethan as if trying to dissect the young man with its gaze. My mistress has instructed me that if someone named Ethan Gremory came here, I should let him pass, the phoenix stated. So you can go. However, it is possible that you might not see my mistress at this point in time. A few days ago, she left to go to the lands of Sarakael. As to when she will return, I do not know. If you are willing to wait, then you can enter her domain. Just know that it might take a few days to a few years before she comes back here. Ethan frowned after hearing the phoenix's reply. Shudo Yudo had told him that on the day that they fought, a great battle was being waged in the lands of Sarakael. That was also why the three-headed dragon attacked them, because it thought that they were enemies that managed to slip past the defenders, who were currently fighting in the realm that was located at the boundary of their world. The young man suddenly fell into a dilemma because he didn't know when the progenitor would be able to return to her domain. But since they were already there, he decided to push through with their journey and wait a few days and see if the progenitor would return. If she didn't return right away, he would ask Merrick to return the others to the Shire continent, while he and Hecate remained to wait for the progenitor's return. After thanking the phoenix for letting them pass unharmed, he returned to the flying ship and told everyone what the guardian told him. We'll trust your decision, Nicole said. Since we are already here, it would be a shame to not see what the place called World's End is like. Right, Lyle nodded. I can't wait to tell Father about this adventure when I return to Southshire. I agree. It's not every day we have the opportunity to go to places outside of the Shire continent, Connell stated. Since we are already here, let's just push forward and be patient for a bit. Ethan glanced at Hecate, and the young lady nodded her head. Understood, Ethan replied. Merrick, we cannot take the flying ship underground, but the Phoenix will allow us to land it near the entrance. Merrick nodded and gave the order for the Catkins to move the flying ship to a good spot near the underground entrance. The Catkin didn't plan to stay in the flying ship because he wanted to accompany his young master. After telling everyone to guard the ship, Ethan's team, including Godfrey, entered the passage that would take them to the underground tunnels that was known as the Maze of Morgoth. This underground maze was similar to the river of Okeanos that could lead anywhere in Midgard. If one didn't know where to go, they could end up wandering the underground tunnels forever. Fortunately, Hecate seemed to know where exactly to go. It was as if her memory of the place had returned, allowing her to retrace the steps that she had taken hundreds of years ago. Godfrey, who also knew the path to World's End, simply followed behind as if he didn't care whether everyone got lost or not. He was more at home in dark places, and being underground didn't faze him. Ethan and Nicole raised their wands, lighting the path with their magic. Connell, Merrick, and Godfrey walked in the rear, while Ethan walked in the front. Nicole, Hecate, and Lyle were in the middle, ready to assist the young man just in case something sprang at them from the dark. The Maze of Morgoth was home to many races, including drows, dwarves, and kobolds. The deeper one went in, they would find themselves looking at hanging stone bridges, where the inhabitants could observe them from afar. If they were lucky, these races would simply observe them from afar. If not, then they would have no choice but to defend themselves if the more aggressive races, like the drow, decided to try and catch a few humans to become their slaves. It was not only the living that walked the underground maze. Specters and undead also roamed this place, including liches and the one-eyed beholders that terrorized unlucky passers-by. Ethan wasn't afraid of them because in the worst-case scenario, he could just flood the underground maze with water. When that happens, the ones who would be crying wouldn't be him. On their second day of traveling underground, they spotted a group of drow bathing in an underground river, and eyeing them with great curiosity. Some of them even playfully made a gesture for Ethan's group to join them, but they decided to just continue walking and ignore their advances. As another day passed, they sensed that they were being followed and felt the brush of magic passing through their bodies. Sebastian had told Ethan that the tingling sensation that he was feeling was scrying magic, which meant that there were a few curious beings who were paying close attention to their group. Even with the close encounters and stalking, nothing really happened. It was as if those who were trying to get under their skin just wanted to make them feel anxious all the time because they found it entertaining. Finally, on the 5th day, a 5-meter-tall beholder decided that they would become its lunch. Unfortunately, it became Dime's life's lunch, which scared most of the onlookers who watched the horrifying scene as the ancient Wendigo devoured the beholder after it was defeated, leaving nothing behind. When the beholder died, the denizens of the underground maze of Morgoth became even more wary of the newcomers who had entered their domain. The drows, a race that liked to fight, had to reassess whether fighting against Ethan's party would be detrimental for them or not. In the end, they decided that it would be best to find out their objectives before making a move. The dwarves and kobolds, as well as the other races, each sent a representative to the young man's group to ask them where they were headed. When Ethan answered that they were heading to World's End, all of the locals thought that they must have lost their minds. However, a few of them were intrigued, so one representative of each race decided to accompany Ethan's group and see for themselves if the young man would be able to survive an encounter with the progenitor of magic. A drow named Quara, a dwarf named Hilger, and a kobold who went by the name Umlo. Originally, he didn't plan to allow the representatives of the other races to follow them. However, Sebastian said that rejecting their offer might make things complicated and potentially result in a grudge between Ethan's group and the other races. Since he didn't want any conflict at this point in time, Ethan reluctantly agreed. Lyle, who was quite curious about the races she normally wouldn't see every day, asked them what living within the maze of Morgoth was like. The drow said that the maze was a convenient place to live in because they could easily go to many other places in Midgard with the underground tunnels. As for the dwarves and the kobolds, they were fond of digging, finding ores and precious gems and doing a bit of tinkering, like blacksmithing and jewelsmithing. So just like the drows, they found living here convenient, for they were able to trade with the other kingdoms in Midgard by traveling through the tunnels. When Lyle asked if other humans used the underground passages to travel, the 3 representatives shook their heads. "We have formed an alliance to repel any large group of humans who try to travel through these tunnels," the drow Quara explained. "However, it is not impossible to travel through these tunnels. We'll let them pass as long as they are able to gain permission from 2 of the 3 rulers of the Maze of Morgoth. Usually, a hefty price must be paid in order to enter. After all, not only would they be able to travel along these tunnels, but they would also be escorted by our people so that they can arrive safely at their destination. In the past, many humans have been allowed to use these tunnels. However, they got greedy and attempted to take over our domains, probably for the precious ores and minerals," the dwarf Hilger commented. "But they underestimated us too much, so we buried all of them with the might of our alliance. Those were good times." The kobold Umlo nodded. "But I'm glad that nothing like that has happened for the past few decades." "Then what about us?" Ethan asked with curiosity. "Why did you guys not attack us?" The 3 representatives exchanged glances with each other before smiling at the same time. "Because the path you took is different," Umlo answered. "You came from the Guardian's path, which meant that you got permission from His Excellency, Lady Eterna. Only those who are able to defeat her or have been recognized by her may enter that path. In short, the drows, the dwarves, and the kobolds cannot hurt you, for that is the agreement that we have with Lady Hecate, Cora stated. Lady Eterna is her familiar, and also the gatekeeper of one of the main entrances of the Maze of Morgoth. Ethan finally understood the reason why the other races only use scrying spells or observe them from afar. He had no doubt that if any of these races became serious, they would not have an easy time traveling through the underground tunnels. Fortunately, they are not hostile, at least for now, Ethan thought. Finally, after traveling for nearly 8 days underground, the young man and his entourage looked at something that blew their mind away. Dude, this is World's End? Lyle, who was the most chatty of them all, couldn't help but be